Thanks for tuning in to Best Friends Dissimilar Interests. I'm Matt.
And I'm Tiberi.
This is a podcast in which two best friends who have known each other for a very long time but do not share very many interests get to know each other by sharing different things that they love with each other. This week, I wanted to give Tiberi a bit of a deep dive into a very specific genre of music that I really love, which is like early, like the roots of heavy metal, so like late 60s, early 70s stuff.
Which I was fucking absolutely blind to come into this. I don't think I've ever heard of any of these bands. So you showed me 15 bands, of which I know none of them?
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because there are obviously other, like, much bigger name bands that I could have on here. The three big ones being Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath. I kind of thought you've heard those bands before anyway. I was like, what's the point of being like, oh, okay, this is from Black Sabbath's first album, and you've probably heard something that they've done very similar anyway. So instead, I wanted to dig into some stuff that has kind of been forgotten, and some of it is before any of those bands. So I do think that they may be, while I can't overstate the influence of those bands on metal, especially Black Sabbath, I do think that there is even earlier stuff that's kind of been forgotten in the name of like, oh, okay, well, Black Sabbath was the first. And also stuff that was contemporary that was also really cool and interesting that we don't really talk about anymore.
Yeah, and so something we'll get into here as well is, so hearing, like you said, I heard a few of these songs, and we'll get to them as they come up, but a few of these songs, I was like, this is just clearly the groundwork or a heavy influence for band X, Y, or Z, like you just mentioned. And I'm just like, that has to be where that style came from. That has to be some kind of influence on Ozzy Osbourne's voice or on Led Zeppelin's kind of like instrumentals. Like, there's some really interesting... I have a couple notes here, like I said, and we'll get to those, where I was just like, is that not just that person? And the answer is no, I don't think.
Yeah, no, none of these bands include any members of... Well, I mean, okay, so that's not technically true. But none of these bands include any, like, founding members of any of, those bands.
Yeah, okay.
Some of them were produced specifically by some of the guys in Deep Purple and stuff like that. But, these were, for the most part, these are guys who did not really go that far in the music industry.
Oh, wow, interesting. Okay.
And once again, that's not true across the board. We can kind of dive into it. I will kind of lay the groundwork of what I wanted to do with this. One thing I didn't want to do was give you these really big name bands that you could argue technically had one song that could be considered, quote unquote, the first heavy metal song.
Okay.
So, like the Beatles are one with Helter Skelter. Pink Floyd with the oh god, I always forget if it's I think it's the Nile song, if I remember right.
See, and this is something we can talk about as well. My perceptions when you say the words heavy metal, I think my perception was what we covered in the black metal episode with Panopticon. I was expecting that to be the baseline for heavy metal before this almost. And I think that's just because of my skewed experience and kind of just my lack of knowledge.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how far back it goes and how influential a lot of this stuff was on just any kind of rock or punk or anything that came after.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And, I'm not going to even get into that because it's not like, punk didn't exist as well or anything, very early. But still, this stuff is a lot earlier and more influential than I think people maybe give it credit for. And
Sure.
But yeah, anyway, if you are ready and you don't have any questions, I'm ready to kind of dive into some of my notes and start introducing these songs.
Yeah, okay, so you want us to go through one by one here and just bring up commentary as it applies?
Yeah, so my plan, if this is okay with you, is I have a couple little notes, and then I was going to dive in. I will introduce the band and a little bit about the history of the band or maybe how the song came to be. Then you can kind of talk about your perception of it. And then I have on a lot of them, I have stuff about why I think it was really influential for, heavy metal going forward.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is just a first quick little note that I wanted to make because, we can dig into, this is how, heavy metal music is influenced by classical because, a lot of these guys were classically trained guitarists, stuff like that. But I'm not really interested that much in doing that. But one thing I did want to talk about is kind of the technological innovation that happened so that heavy metal could happen. And that's kind of the Marshall stack. So you've seen these huge walls of Marshall amps specifically. Like people still do this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Marshalls are fantastic.
So that is a thing that without that, heavy metal wouldn't exist. And it really was kind of the watershed moment where it made that genre possible, if that makes sense. So that was in 1965 when, at the behest of Pete Townsend and John Entwistle, I think is how you say his name, from The Who, they wanted more powerful amps so they could hear themselves over the band and the crowd when they played, because they couldn't hear themselves and they felt like they were being sloppy because they couldn't hear it.
Right, because monitors for your ears and wireless, systems didn't exist back then.
Yeah, so they just needed raw power so that they could hear what they were doing. So, for them, he created these 100-watt valve amps. And I'm not going to get into all the technical stuff because I don't know everything about it. But basically, they were just really fucking loud. They asked him to design them so that they could be stacked, so that they could just put a bunch on top of each other and be as loud as possible. I did want to make a quick note because a lot of times when people talk specifically about this, they talk about the man Marshall and how he did X, Y, and Z, when really he was just kind of a guy who paid other people to do stuff. So These amps were actually designed by a guy named Ken Bran and Dudley Craven. So I just wanted to give them a little shout out because they're the people that actually designed it and built it.
Well, hell yeah. As an engineer, hell yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was neat that, these guys, even though they, weren't musicians or anything like that, they've had such a huge impact on a whole genre of music, multiple genres of music. So I thought that was really cool.
I mean, to this day, I mean, for those who don't know, I do play guitar still kind of intermittently, not as much as I used to when I was younger, but I mean, getting a Marshall system with a cabinet and everything, it's just, that was always the dream for everybody growing up, playing guitar. Everyone's like, oh, you gotta get a Marshall, you gotta get a head and an amp cabinet and just go for it. And I never did, but I mean, people live and die by those things.
Yeah, and it's really interesting kind of the relation between specifically a lot of metal guitarists and amps, because a lot of these musicians treat the amp as its own instrument, and they do really cool, interesting things with it. But yeah, so that's kind of where this started. Those Marshall amps, those just big ass 100-watt amps. And so the big ones that I mentioned, the big bands, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and Deep Purple, they were all formed in 1968, and then different points, 1969, 1970, whatever, is when they started putting out their first albums. So we are starting before any of them were even formed. Which was with the first band that you heard, which was Blue Cheer. So a little bit of background on them. They were formed in 1966. They're from California. Their first album, which you heard Summertime Blues off of their first album, which was Vincebus Eruptum, which was recorded in 67 and released in January of 68. And if you want to tell me a little bit about what you heard, then I can tell you a little bit more about them.
Yeah, so pretty immediately, this sounds like almost just a very 60s blues song. It's just got a lot of blues guitar in it. I don't really particularly think it's extremely heavy. And I don't know. It's just one of those songs where it's just very light. It's got some really smooth guitar riffs. I'm trying to think of a band I could kind of compare it to, but it just is very quintessentially 60s and 70s light rock almost.
Yeah, so when you think about what else was going on in 66, though, this would have been like really heavy. And a lot of that is coming not only from, like you said, the blues guitar, which is this early metal, all that guitar is based on the blues.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure that's something that you heard again and again. But another thing that I think is really important about them is the drumming. Like, I don't know if you paid that much attention to the drums, but they're just thunderous. And like, you watch that dude play, and he looks like a thrash metal drummer because he's just beating the shit out of his kit.
Yeah, because they have a lot of drum fill sections at the ends of bars and phrases. Like it's like they give him kind of a second to just kind of go for it before coming back in.
Yeah, yeah. And there's this really funny, because they were moderately successful. Dude, this song specifically was a pretty big hit for them, and so they were on some TV programs from back in the day. So it's like this, black and white Ed Sullivan looking motherfucker. And one of them, when he introduced them, he's just like, there's this band, they're called Blue Cheer, run for your life. And then they just fucking get into it, just like start beating those drums and and so like even from the start, people were just like, oh my God, like what are these people doing?
Yeah, it's like I said, and honestly, like, even with the vocals, there's a lot of shit you hear today in, like, modern music, and, say what you will about, like, some modern blues. Like, you've heard of Wolfmother. You've heard of, like, Jack White. I hear a lot of these bands, and especially like this one in particular, in the vocals alone, in their vocals. And I'm just like, surely there is a link there with that kind of energy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good observation, because that is... Their vocals are pretty unique, and for the time anyway, because it was almost bluesy, but he's shouting it in a way that I think is interesting. But yeah, just a little bit more about what, where this was coming from. They were considered an acid rock band, and acid rock is kind of a shoot off of psychedelic rock. And acid rock is kind of a catch-all term that's a little bit hard to define, but it was... like psychedelic rock, but it was more focused on like raw energy and just what people would now call heavier sounds. And at the time, they probably still would have said heavier, because both heavy and metal were terms used kind of in hippie speak. And that's kind of where that comes from. It wasn't a genre, but people would be like, oh, that's heavy. And it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, but it was similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
So, yeah, that's kind of where Blue Cheer was coming from. Were there any other things that you wanted to say about this song? It's also interesting, and I don't think we mentioned this is a cover of a blues song, which is interesting.
Yeah, it says Eddie Cochran, right?
Yeah, Eddie Cochran was a blues singer from the 50s. I think he died in 1960. And he was, pretty big name. He had some pretty big hits, and this was one of them.
Okay, that's interesting. It's funny how many bands' biggest songs are just covers.
Yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, this one, I think this is probably their biggest hit. I don't know if you'd consider them a one-hit wonder. But
I had heard the name Blue Cheer at some point. I never listened to them, but I have seen, I think my mother may even have like one of their vinyls, like from a record store. But as far as listening to them, this is the first time I've ever actually heard a song. But yeah, as far as the actual like meaning of the song, I mean, it just kind of seems like, summertime blues. You gotta fucking work hard just to make $1. It says at one point, and so it's kind of just like the grind. Just kind of pointing it out is where I kind of read the lyrics, at least.
Yeah, and though I get it is, it's not the original lyrics, it's a cover of a song. I do think that it's interesting that if, we could argue this is the first heavy metal song, and it's very much blue collar, having to get up and like, you don't want to do any of this shit, but you have to go to work, even though you're like, it's the summer, I want to just do fun shit. And
and just for minimum wage in the fucking United States of America, minimum wage is $7.25. I want everyone to understand that's bullshit.
Yeah, and this was what, 67? So God knows what minimum. I don't even know if they had fucking minimum wage. Who knows? But yeah, so I think that's another interesting thing. And another, this is just a quick fact. This isn't Blue Cheer related. But another fun fact about how kind of the blue collar experience shaped heavy metal, the power chord is actually the reason that that's so big in metal is because Tony Iommi, the guitarist from Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
he worked
Old tiny Iommi.
old tiny Iommi. You have to be only real fans of Best Friends to Similar Interests will get that. No fake fans will understand.
You fuckers need to go back 10 episodes into our archives and find out what the hell we're talking about.
But anyway, he was working in some kind of machine shop or something. He was working on a piece of sheet metal and had an accident and cut off the tips of two of his fingers. So he was like, well, shit, my guitar playing days are done. This was, in the mid to late 60s. So this was before Black Sabbath was even a thing. And one of his buddies showed him this old blues guitarist who had been in a terrible accident and had, done a lot of damage to his hand. And that kind of inspired him to, get back on the guitar. But what I'm getting at is that's why power chords are such a big thing, because it was a shape that he could make and maintain. So,
so Tony Iommi was pretty much one of the first users of power chords in guitar, electric guitar.
I'm not saying he was like the first or anything like that, but he is the reason that power chords are such a big thing in heavy metal specifically.
Oh my god, it makes complete sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, power chords. Yeah, you only need a couple there to. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of fun. And, a lot of this stuff, I'm not going to say like, oh, they're the first one that did this, but they were kind of the first one to do this in this realm of hard rock that really shaped a lot of stuff going forward.
That's really cool to hear, because like you said, I did get kind of a psychedelic feel from this one. It was like that kind of airy, light blues. The guitar just had like a really thick sustain on it too. It's just like really like, wah, and it's I liked the song, honestly. I wasn't wowed by it, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, I like Blue Cheer, but I'm kind of the same way. I think that they're really cool and interesting and important, but frankly overlooked in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I'm not going and listening to a ton of Blue Cheer every day.
That's fair. Awesome.
Did you have anything else on that one, or you want to go to the next song?
No, I think we've covered that one. I think especially too, this has been the first one. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to hear like psychedelic rock and acid rock rather in this episode. When you say heavy metal, like I said, my dumb brain was like, oh yes, Iron Maiden. It's like, well, is Iron Maiden even heavy metal?
Yeah, no. Iron Maiden is kind of in today's world, and starting from the early 80s. When you say just heavy metal, so like baseline heavy metal, Iron Maiden is kind of the one that you think of.
Yeah.
And, you could be a lot more technical. You could say like, oh, they're part of the new wave of British heavy metal. So they're that sound specifically. Or you could even say, oh, well, they're kind of more of a power metal sound. But to me, when like just baseline heavy metal, I think Iron Maiden is kind of the litmus test at this point.
That makes sense. Again, that adds up because that's what my brain was expecting walking into this, and it wasn't exactly what we saw. So,
yeah. I mean, their first album didn't come out until 1980. So, I mean, that's
wow,
yeah, that's way down the road. So,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's why this sounds so different, because it's 12 years before.
And like you said, when I think 60s, especially, it makes a lot more sense comparatively speaking. That may have been heavier. Exactly. Well, I guess it was heavier.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, at least with this strain that we're kind of talking about, the late 60s, specifically American heavy metal, it is very much based in blues guitar with kind of a psychedelic sensibility.
Sure. So, I can see what you mean by that.
Yeah. And obviously, like, the British stuff is also very bluesy. But yeah, that's, I think there's more of the psychedelic kind of in the American strain early on anyway.
Okay. Well, shit. I guess, without further ado, definitely, like I said, I can hear kind of bits of, honestly, even like Queen, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple. I kind of heard that as well. It all just kind of feels like there's elements there where it's like the way he like does the voice on the intonation sounds a lot like Freddie Mercury at times. And I'm just like, I can only imagine Freddie Mercury being active, most like more than not in the '80s musically, like being 20 years old, he'd have that experience of hearing this band. So, yeah, I think it's interesting that you selected these because it's cool to see musical influences, and it's not correlation causation aren't can't prove that, but you can only imagine like that might be where they pulled this.
Yeah, yeah. And I do kind of think of this list as a little, the very beginning of it, I think of as pre-Black Sabbath, because
Yeah,
people love to say, like, oh yeah, Black Sabbath, their first album was just the first metal album. Nothing before that was even remotely metal, and they were the only metal band of the 70s. You know what I mean? Like, people who should know better. You know what I mean? People who are big metalheads can sometimes be like that. And I'm like, no, there was so much other shit, both before them and contemporary.
fucking snobs.
Yeah. So anyway, these first few, I'm calling, pre-Black Sabbath. And like I said, this was released in January of 1968. Black Sabbath was formed after this.
Yeah. So again, had to have hit their ears at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all I'm getting at. Is I think it is very interesting to hear, like, okay, obviously Black Sabbath is the big name, but there's all this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, cool. I think without further ado, you want to head on up to the next one, which I'm kind of jokingly calling the Italian national anthem.
Okay, you're going to like where this title comes from. So it's Iron Butterfly, In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Yeah.
So Iron Butterfly also formed in 1966. This is from their second album, this is the title track of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Their first album was called Heavy, and it also came out in 1968. But
Okay.
I just want to give you the little story of the title. So it was written by Doug Engle, who was the vocalist and organist, while he was just extremely drunk. So he was he was telling the lyrics to the drummer, Ron Bushy, who wrote them down as he heard them. So he was trying to say "in the Garden of Eden," but because he was so drunk, it came out "In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida."
Oh my god, it's really funny because that's exactly the note I had. I was like, "Is this in the Garden of Eden? Like, am I just not getting this? Like, why is he slurring it? I don't understand."
Because he was really fucking drunk, and they probably thought it was funny, because that is pretty funny in all fairness.
It is, and weirdly enough, it kind of works.
Yeah, I mean, it would still be cool if it was in the Garden of Eden, but yeah, it does kind of add a little bit of mystery of just In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. It's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Especially with like, we'll get into it here, but that's cool to hear because I was really hoping I was like, is that what they're going for? It has to be, right? And I was like, but I don't know.
I was merciful, by the way. So you listen to the single version, which is a little bit under 3 minutes.
Oh no.
The album version is over 17 minutes.
Holy shit.
And live versions typically went 35 to 40 minutes.
I would only like to hope and believe it's just 50 verses of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Yeah. No, there were no more lyrics. That was it. But then they would just fucking, like the 17-minute version, there's seriously just like a 2-minute drum solo in the middle.
All right, I'm down. Hey, yeah. November Rain had to come from something else too. So,
just a quick side story about what an asshole I am. I used to think it was really funny where we went to high school. Sometimes for gym class, we would go to this little bowling alley that was close to the school. And I would get into the bowling alley as quickly as possible because they had this jukebox.
I know which fucking jukebox you're talking about.
And they had this on there, the album version. So I would put like $2 in it, and then I would play it 3 times. So the entire time we were at this bowling alley, it was just like people were putting their money in, like, oh, I want to hear the new Eminem song, and the whole time it was just In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida on air.
Okay. You know what's really weird? I knew when I heard this song, I'd heard it before, Matt. I I don't know where I'd heard it before, but I think you may have just unlocked it. Because I was like, where the absolute fuck have I heard this? Is it in a movie? And I'm starting to think it's in that fucking bowling alley, eight fucking aisles down, 8 lanes down. Jesus.
Like I said, we were there like 45 minutes because we had to get there and back in one class period. I thought it was so goddamn funny to play this and Echoes by Pink Floyd because Echoes is like 20 minutes long. So
Jesus Christ. It still only cost $1.
Yeah, the whole time people would just be like, what the fuck is this?
Oh my God. You haven't changed a bit, you know that?
Oh yeah, I've been fucking honoring my whole life.
No, that's actually fucking hilarious. That's yeah, especially knowing that my brain was so confused. Okay, so I guess without further ado, you have anything else on the formation or history of this song or band?
No, everything else I have is about the actual song. The only other thing I have actually is this album sold surprisingly well in the first year it was released because Iron Butterfly, let's be clear, is a one-hit wonder.
Huh.
In the first year that this album was out, it sold 8 million copies, and for a while it was the best-selling album of all time.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
For one hit?
Yeah, because the single didn't actually do that well on, like, it was a hit, but it wasn't like this crazy huge hit. People just loved the album. Like, they wanted the album version. So people went out and bought this like fucking gangbusters, I guess, so they could do acid and like listen to this on
lose
loop.
their fucking mind.
Yeah. And which I think is interesting because metal as a whole really is kind of a genre dominated by albums. You know, like obviously, you know, fucking Metallica has had some big hits or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, like, it's, if you're really into metal, it's not often that you're just like, oh yeah, I like a few songs by that band. It's like, no, I like this album, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because you definitely get album snobs and you get band snobs. I've dealt with both. And it's kind of like going back to the Less Than Jake episode we did. It's like, oh, this album has no horns on it. And everyone's like, fuck this band, they suck. I'm like, okay, well, just a matter of preference.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I guess I'll go in here from my side then if you're ready.
Yeah.
So it kind of starts off, you get this like, I have described here as kind of like a Smash Mouth's like Walking on the Sun, or the Eric Clapton Sunshine of Your Love theme, where it's like really like high sustained guitar, and it's this very kind of like California desert sand kind of scale and riff, and with the organ in the background, kind of gives off this kind of Jim Morrison Doors vibe, especially with how he's singing, you know, or he's just like da 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 ya ba da. It's like that's kind of. Is that a fair analogy to make to the Doors for this song?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Like, now that you say it, I can definitely hear that.
That's not a criticism. I just thought it was interesting. I think this one's kind of a really fun vibe. I think you answered my next note here, which, what is the Gata da Vida? And is it religious in context? And I guess the answer is yes. And again, I have this note. I was like, how the fuck is this heavy metal? Because this does not sound heavy metal to me in this song. Like I said, it sounds more like a Clapton song.
Yeah, and
which I don't know when that song came out. It may have been after the fact. So hey, maybe there's something to that.
And I will say, you know, one thing that you see in this early heavy metal, and then kind of the derivatives of it, specifically doom metal, are these big fuzzy riffs. So like don 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 don, like that's kind of a quintessential doom metal riff. It's just not as heavy because the technology isn't there yet, but it is very fuzzy in that way that is the distortion of the day, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. If you isolated like the whole, just the guitar, that would be an absolute metal riff for sure. Aside from that, yeah, I thought this was a good one. It was fun. Like I said, just very chill. Not really much going on with the lyrics aside from, baby, walk with me to the Garden of Eden, take my hand. It's just kind of, I'm not sure if there's really super deep meaning to it. Just kind of like a devotion love song, kind of straightforward lyric.
Yeah, as I understand it, it's literally just a song about the love between Adam and Eve, and that's just kind of wholesome in a way. It's just like,
Yeah.
man, those two just loved each other, and isn't that great?
Yeah, there you go, man. But yeah, aside from that, like I said, it was a fun one. Not wowed. Something I do have a note here is like, it seems like the vocalization on some of these words, like, it seems very intent, and this isn't a criticism. It seems very intent, and I think we'll see this again later, on what words they put on the ends of lines. And a lot of the time, it's going to be a word that ends with E or ah. And so it's like hand or like me. And like, they hold that note and give it so much power. I'm assuming that's intentional, because when you think of just how we vocalize that allows so much more like just force behind it, you know?
Yeah, and I always think of that as I think that's a really good observation that I don't think, I mean, I'd never really thought about it, but the way that he does that is very like Metallica almost. You know what I mean? How he would like do that little thing on the end where it's like, oh, rah. Like he's kind of doing that, but it's the 60s, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm calling it right now. Metallica, they stole everything from Iron Butterfly. If
man, they're gonna fucking sue your ass for saying that.
oh yeah, Metallica really will come after me.
Cut this shit. He's gonna be at my James Hetfield will be at my door like, hey motherfucker. I'm like, oh shit.
I just like look across the roof, and James Hetfield just has a fucking like pair of binoculars looking at me, shaking his fist like, I hear you, you son of a bitch.
One day. And then you just look out the window and burn a copy of Death Magnetic. Anyway. But yeah, so that one was fun. But yeah, I think something we didn't cover before, too. Album cover on this one, just some dudes in colored suits from the 60s. Pretty big Anchorman vibes, but yeah.
It is big Anchorman vibes, isn't it?
But no, it seems very straightforward. Kind of similar with Blue Cheer as well. It's kind of that quintessential 60s and 70s album cover where they're kind of just sketched in really well in this kind of picturesque frame. That happens a few more times on this list where it's just the people sketched in, which is great.
Yeah. No, I like that as well. This is just a quick aside. And I just want to make clear, I feel the same way about these two songs. I'm not crazy, like I'm not like, oh, this is the best song ever, but I do think they are very foundational, which is why I wanted to include them.
I definitely didn't dislike them, but like you said, it wasn't like, whoa, oh yeah.
Yeah, there is some stuff on this album that I do or on this playlist I do legitimately just love to death, but no, these aren't really them. But no, just a quick aside, so there's this really funny bit from The Simpsons where, you know, Bart, being the scamp he is, takes all the like hymn books and he replaces it with like the sheet music for Inagata Vita, but he has it typed out in the Garden of Eden so that everybody thinks it's a hymn. And
oh my god.
And it shows like all these people in church and they're like, in the Garden of Eden, baby. And then it like it shows Homer and he looks over at Marge. He's like, didn't we used to make out to this hymn? And then it just says 17 minutes later and this old woman is like just shredding the fucking organ and then she just falls over.
I need to watch more of that show.
Yeah, that part gets me every time. I would watch it on repeat on YouTube. It made me laugh so hard.
Jesus. Fun.
But
all right, cool.
That's all I had. If you're ready to move on, I am.
Yes, I would very much like some guidance on this next one.
Okay, so I'm not going to lie. This one I don't think is like a super influential metal song, but it's just so weirdly fucking heavy that I had to include it.
Okay. Yeah, this was an experience for me.
Yeah, it's really fucking weird. So I don't even know how to say the title. I think it's Caledonia by Cro-Magnon. And
yes.
Just a little bit of background on Cro-Magnon. There's not a ton of information out there about them, but they were an experimental music band from New York. There was this quote that I found that one of the guys from the band, he was saying like, oh, okay, so we were very conscious of kind of the music that brought in the next decade. So he's like, Elvis shaking his, fucking pelvis at us kind of brought us from the 50s into the 60s or whatever.
Sure.
He's like, we wanted to give our idea of what we thought music was going to be like in the late 70s. So he's like, we wanted to herald in the 70s with this album that we did of like experimental music, and this is what they landed on. And,
well, hey man, you gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, and it's really fucking weird.
I'll come out and say, definitely was not a huge fan of this one.
No, I mean,
it was not. Yeah.
I like it, but it's very weird. So they were formed in like the late 60s. It's kind of hard to find information on them. They only released one album. It was called Orgasm. It was released in...
lovely.
Yeah, it was released in 1969. It was later re-released as like cave music, I think. But
okay.
Yeah, it was originally released as Orgasm, and it's just a fucking ride. Like some of it you're like, is this even music? But like I said, it's just so weird how fucking heavy it is for 1969 that I was like, I have to include this.
Yeah, no, and it makes a lot more sense hearing the history of the band a little bit, because, like I said, no hate, no shame. Just saying, definitely not something I'm into. I think especially too. One thing I want to ask too, if you don't have anything else, is the lyrics.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Some of these lyrics are pretty kick-ass. I'll give them that.
Okay, there's some that are kick-ass, and then there's the line here, just out of nowhere, cut deep the sweet vagina.
Some of them are just like, what the fuck are you talking about? But then some of them are really cool, like Madonna Light, the hyper-speeding, caress the newborn with a tear, of misty windfields, crystal plains, and all the magic of daybreak. It's like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's cool concepts in the like, I do like the line where it's like deadly is the stage which stagnates calm before a raging storm, the hands and nails frozen black by twilight stripped of sinew. That's a cool line. That's a cool 4 lines. And it's just, for me, like I like I said, there's bits of cool, but I'm just like, the rest I'm scratching my head like, what?
Yeah. No, I don't know what any of it fucking means. Like,
yeah.
But I like it in the same way that I like, super old literature that I'll read and don't understand any of it, because it expects you to be, a very learned monk in the 1600s. You know what I mean? So it expects you to know all of these references, but I don't fucking know what any of it means, but it's still cool. Like I still enjoy it.
Who the fuck is picked? Who the fuck is Agricola?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Descended veil of resurrection, Agricola's granite tomb, the blood of Pict in all its fury, died by 1,000 eyes. Don't know what it fucking means, but it's pretty metal.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like so just fucking far out there, which in a way, like, I can definitely understand, like, just kind of stimulus for stimulus's sake. It's almost in a weird way, kind of like if you were to kind of like do a paint and dip, like it's random motion to that, but like it's still beautiful in the way it's settled, and they'll be different every time. And so it's like, I get the idea of like throwing something at it and just kind of seeing what people can get from it. I get that. But at some point I have to be like, okay, but actually though, halfway through, it's like funneled through magenta hallways. Hell was but the froth. And then it just says, see upcoming rock shows, get tickets for your favorite artists.
Oh no, that's just a mistake on my part where I copied and I like copy and paste it, and undoubtedly I picked that up on the website.
You know what's really funny though is I couldn't understand the lyrics without this, so I just trusted that to be true.
That's really funny, actually. No, yeah, that's just me being dumb.
Okay, we can cut that.
Oh no, I think that's very funny.
But no, like I said, there's some cool stuff like Diamonds of Lightning, Lightning Diamond, Festival of Dragon Fire, but it's literally just like they just went into a thesaurus and just took fucking words and they're like, yeah, medieval shit, fucking slap it in. It's like, wait, but no, what is this?
Like, I don't doubt that it means a lot of things, and it's like a lot of poetry where it can mean, completely unique things to you or whatever. I'm not gonna lie, I don't fucking get it. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I honestly just included it because when I first heard it, I was like, how is this not first wave of black metal stuff? Like, how is this late 60s New York experimental music? How is this not fucking a contemporary of Venom,
So that's actually really interesting because I actually am I'm learning. I would very easily relate this song to the one by Panopticon with the tin whistle or the flute. It felt the same vibe, especially when you have the bagpipes in this, kind of echoing that same kind of vibe. I assume it's bagpipes. I'm not sure if it is, but yeah, it's kind of that same like the heavy screaming for vocalizations with that flute or that instrumental background paired with it. I wonder if this is where he got that, or if he'd heard something like that before. So I mean, again,
black metal definitely embraces this kind of thing a lot more than any other genre. Like, black metal is just, a lot of it is super weird and experimental in the same way that this is. And, this obviously, I think that this specifically, this song, people are like, oh, this is kind of the first noise rock song because that's just what it is. Like I said, I think they weirdly kind of succeeded with being ahead of the curve in a way. But I don't think that this is actually that influential. Like, if you talk to a black metal artist and you're like, even back in the day, and you're like, oh, what do you think of Cro-Magnon? They'd be like, who the fuck is Cro-Magnon? I think it's just kind of a weird coincidence, but like I said, it's just so fucking heavy for 1969. I was like, well, I'm gonna throw it on there. It's just fun.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think we've kind of hit all the spots on this one. I literally have a note here. It just says, "What the actual fuck are these lyrics? What the fuck is going on?" But yeah, okay, cool. Album art on this one is it's like this fucking very like acid trippy like face of a man and like skeletons like hugging in the river. Shit, it's a lot going on. Hard to describe.
Yeah, once again, I think it's cool, but I'm also just like, I don't know what the fuck y'all are on about.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so I guess the next one is probably I'm going to call it Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze because it's called Fruit and Icebergs.
That's actually where they got the idea for Tropical Freeze. The final boss was Randy Holden all along. That's why King K. Rool isn't in it.
God damn it.
So yeah.
Spoilers.
So next we have Randy Holden. Because this album is, and I'll explain all of it, it's like not even clear if this is a Randy Holden album or if the band is called Population 2. There's just not much information.
Okay.
Like, everything I found on this, I found this weird fam website that somebody has, saved on the Wayback Machine, that this guy undoubtedly just knew Randy Holden. So, and it's like written in that very like, oh, and then this happened, haha XD, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that sounds kind of fun. But anyway, so Randy Holden, he was briefly a guitarist with Blue Cheer. He actually played on their third album, so he was not on the song that we heard earlier.
Okay.
So, and like I said, a lot of this stuff is kind of hard to find. Well, why did this happen? But apparently what happened was he left the band when their management wouldn't allow him to use the amps that he wanted to use.
Those fucking Marshalls, man.
Yeah, he was just like, they won't let me do what I want. And then when you hear what he wanted to do, I kind of understand why they didn't. He quit the band and pursued a sponsorship with Sun Amplifiers, and those are still, like, a lot of people love Suns. Okay. Specifically, actually, which is kind of funny, in this realm of, like, stoner rock, stoner metal, doom metal, which is what this is a big precursor to, so that's kind of interesting to me. But anyway, so what he wanted and what he did was he wanted to play with a stack of 16 200-watt sun amplifiers. So
this motherfucker is just the guy from Mad Max Fury Road, isn't he?
basically, he was just like, I want it to be as loud as fucking possible. So I kind of understand why they're like, nobody's going to hear anything else besides you. And he's like, well, fuck it. I'll have my own band then.
Oh my god. Okay. Hey, well,
So
guess it worked.
as I understood it, the band name was Population 2. They kind of just put his name on it because he was a recognizable name at the time.
Okay.
So he formed Population 2 with Chris Lockheed, who simultaneously played drums and keyboard. So this motherfucker was drumming and playing keyboard at the same time.
Holy shit.
So they came to the name Population 2. It refers to the two members of the band, as well as it's a name of a class of star that is formed from heavy metals.
Well, there you fucking go. Well played, boys.
Yeah. And so people will argue about what is the first use of the term heavy metal as a genre. And I think that this is, and I want to be clear, this is still not a well-known album or a well-known guitarist, really, unless you're very specifically into like early doom metal. Then you know him. But if you're not, there's a good chance you don't know who he is.
Okay.
So a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, this or that is the first time heavy metal was used. I think this is proof that obviously people were using it in like 1969, 1970, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, so I guess, do you have anything else? Because I think I have some pretty interesting piggybacks off of that.
You go ahead, and then I'll tell what happened to the band and everything after.
Okay. Yeah, so like you said, definitely in this song, it's a very slow tempo. It's a very kind of like droning sound. And I think from what we talked about before, back in the Black Sabbath episode, that's kind of indicative of doom metal, if I'm not mistaken. Very kind of like droning low guitar. And this is really what I was expecting more so coming into this episode for listening. It's like I said, it reminded me very much of Black Sabbath.
Yeah, and so it's kind of hard to... I am pretty confident in saying that he had not heard Black Sabbath when he was recording this album. I can't confidently say that it came out before Black Sabbath's first album, and there's a good chance it didn't, but that's not because it wasn't recorded first. And like, I'm kind of not interested in being like, oh, well, he was the first because X, Y, and Z. I'm just saying that, you know, there were other people doing this kind of thing is all I'm getting at. So I do think he's kind of a great lost, you know, like this is a great lost album in a way because this is so doom metal, and it, you know, was recorded in the late 60s.
Yeah, and I actually really like this one. Like I said, it's just a really nice kind of jam. You got some really interesting lyrics here, and he's kind of singing them with a really high pitch, kind of like doing the vibrato on the end. And it's kind of, like I said, they have that more powerful metal vibrato on the end of lines. It's some really cool lines here, like, it's so nice to feel the colors all days when you are new. You close your eyes and feel the foam of silence, which is just a really cool image. So it's really not that long of a song. But yeah, I think it was a fun one. I really enjoyed the instrumentals on this one quite a bit. And kind of like I got a note here as well. And on those lines I just said too, like, again, I hear kind of a mix of like Dio and Freddie Mercury. Like I hear both of those voices kind of mixed in their like power and that control.
Yeah, no, the performance definitely is pretty powerful, I think. Like, not only, you know, instrumentally, but he is putting a lot into his delivery of the actual, you know, vocals.
Yeah.
And
sure.
And like it's crazy to me. It's just two guys, you know.
Yeah, that's wild. I did not know that. Which I guess I should have taken that because the album art for this is just two guys with like space behind them, which again makes complete sense because the stars make heavy metal. So yeah, okay. It all kind of wrapped up there with that. With now that I know that, but yeah, like I said, overall, I liked it. Definitely just kind of again, very bluesy, but also I'm hearing that Sabbath now.
Yeah, yeah, and so this was the last album that I'm going to call like pre-Sabbath. Um, it was released in 1970, which is the same year that Black Sabbath's first album came out. But like I said, I can't confidently say exactly when it was recorded, but it was held on. Like the record label held on to it for a while before they released it.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking it probably was recorded around the same time that Black Sabbath's first album was in 1969, maybe earlier. But I'm pretty confident in saying that there's no way he could have heard that album before he recorded this.
Right, just because how timelines overlap.
Yeah. So unfortunately, what happened is the record label held on to this album, and he basically went to his manager and he was like, "Hey, they have to release it. I recorded it, all this stuff." And they looked at his contract, and there was nothing about when they had to release it or if they had to release it. So they kind of just held on to it. Unfortunately, while he waited, he went bankrupt.
Oh,
His gear manager sold all of his equipment, his guitars, his amps, everything.
oh
And
no!
and he didn't play on another album until 1997.
And that was what 30ish years later.
Yeah, about 30 years.
That's fucked. Oh man, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think he was like
Oh,
really burned by it because the only reason he came back and recorded anything was because there was just this one guy who fucking loved this album and his other work
yeah.
and just hounded him and was like, "You have to put something else out." So, yeah, for 30
Well, hey.
years, he did not play guitar.
Well, at least he got something came back around to him. But for what it's worth, I liked this one. Like I said, this is one I actually like. Really enjoyed the jam of it. But this is one, like I said, it's. I'm starting to get a little more in tune with on this stuff. The other two, the one from Blue Cheer and the one from oh god, excuse me, Iron Butterfly, they're fun. But like this one's definitely a little more like guitar heavy, you know?
Yeah. No, I do have a note here that people who are into this kind of thing and know about this album and his, earlier work consider him to be kind of the great lost guitarist of the 60s because there are so many very celebrated guitarists of the 60s and people are like he should have been that. Like he should have been a big star, but he just wasn't.
Yeah, this happens. Well, okay, well, shit. I guess that's kind of all I had on this one. But you have anything else to add?
No, I'm ready to dive into the next one if you are.
All right, the next one is Sir Lord Baltimore's Kingdom Come. So this one is probably one of my favorites that you've shown me here.
Oh yeah, dude, I fucking love Sir Lord Baltimore. Specifically this album, which was their first album, Kingdom Come. But yeah, I fucking love this album.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about them.
Okay, so yeah, I have a little bit about them. They were formed in 1968, so another band that was formed in 68. This was their first album, which was released in 1970, but it was later in the year, like pretty late in the year, so they definitely could have heard Black Sabbath before this came out.
Okay.
It kind of has the distinction of very possibly technically being the first album that was called explicitly heavy metal as a genre in a review. A review of the album in Cream, which was like that old rock magazine,
Yeah.
referred to it as heavy metal, and they're like, "Oh, he's using all the tools of a heavy metal guitarist." So that's kind of one of the claims to fame that this album has, is that it arguably is the first thing that was described explicitly as heavy metal as a genre.
Yeah, and so I could definitely see that because this, honestly, I'm starting to see a lot of parallels to Heaven and Hell, Dio's album for Black Sabbath. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that that's definitely fair because that album was not the typical like super slow doomy sound of early Sabbath.
Right.
And this isn't really either. Like the guitars are obviously like really distorted, and so is the bass, and there's a lot of multi-tracking on the guitars, which I think is pretty unique for how early this is. But it is like really kind of frenetic and like very energetic.
Yeah, I think specifically too, like the fucking the fucking vocalizations, like one of my first notes here on this is he comes in, and I was not expecting that fucking voice to be with the song. It's just like, I hear sirens calling me. I'm like, Jesus.
And like right after that, it's like bear near like it kicks ass.
Which is another thing I'm definitely heard in a lot of these songs is kind of like the stinger guitar riff on the end of lines, almost like it's like spoken poetry and then a stinger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's interesting. But yeah, that is kind of, especially of this early stuff, that is a very kind of metal thing where, you know, they have these big riffs that they really make room for. You know what I mean? They're like, we want you to hear this kick-ass riff that we did.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think this song's really interesting because it's like I literally say like this guy sounds like he's a fucking pirate or he's about to fucking do a sea shanty and he's just fucking like belting it like hard. It's interesting. Yeah, really powerful voice. And like you said, there's like so many. They make some room for those hooks and those riffs so often, but not too often, to the point where it's like you can enjoy it when it hits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they probably have heavier songs on this album, but I fucking love this one. I think it's such a good song.
Yeah, no, I quite liked this one. He actually says at one point, you know, the lyrics are very much like. I don't even know how to describe them. It's just kind of like this very high fantasy, like, you know, I give me my kingdom and then my will be done. Come my kingdom. And it's all this like very visceral fantasy imagery where he's like giant phoenix, which he belts that part. And he says, be my wings. Roll on, chariots of gold. And then he says, shining wizards bring the rain, shooting arrows at the sun. And I'm just like, this is, again, excuse me, is it Ride the Wind by Dio?
Oh, that's Die Young is the one you're
Die
thinking
Young,
but it starts with Gather the Wind, and he like delivers it in such a powerful,
wind. Yeah, I get that same kind of imagery, where it's like gather the wind, and it's like something about hurling of the sun or something like that. Again, very similar imagery here for me, and delivery similar too. So, and this would have been before Dio, right?
Yeah, I mean Dio would have been putting stuff out like Dio's career goes back to the 50s. But it's not like anybody had heard of him at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, and we'll get into what he was doing actually. But yeah, no, this, that, I mean, you could definitely say this was like pre-Dio in a big way.
Yeah, and like overall in this, I think that this has a lot of really good airy vocals, which is like I personally gravitate towards those. I like Dio's voice, where it's just kind of higher registers and just powerful. Is that really more of like a, when I say heavy metal, like is that more of a power metal thing?
Yeah, that's definitely more of a power metal thing, of like the big kind of, especially like the operatic, like powerful vocals. Yes. Because, you know, death metal is the death growls. Black metal tends to be shrieking. Thrash metal can kind of be a lot of things, but it's typically more of a, almost a punk shout a lot of the time.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, like the big operatic vocals, that typically is power metal. It does happen in other genres, but that is, I would say, mostly a characteristic of power metal.
Okay, good to know. Just so I understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, like I said, overall, definitely one of my favorite ones you've shown me here. Really, really fun to listen, actually.
Yeah, and just a little bit about what happened to them. So this was off their first album. Their second album was self-titled. It really abandoned like the frenetic pace of this one, and it was a lot more in line with what Black Sabbath was doing.
Okay.
It was their last until 2006 when they put out Sir Lord Baltimore 3 Raw. And they had written this album in the 70s, and they were hoping to get it released in 76, but they, got dropped from their label, and it just never happened. They ended up breaking up. But anyway, so they eventually did get to release it in 2006, and I guess one of them was a born-again Christian because they kept all the music, but they rewrote all the lyrics to be explicitly, like, Christian,
Oh. Huh.
So it's just kind of an interesting thing that after years and years, they were like, we're a Christian, like, metal band now. I don't know. It's just a fun fact.
That's interesting. But yeah, cool. Like I said, I think that's all I had from my side. Anything else we'd like to share about this?
No, I'm glad that you like this one. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, no, it was good. I'm starting to realize, like, what subsects kind of speak to me.
Yeah. No, yeah, that one's really good. I mean, I think... it still does have those big kind of crunchy riffs, like down, 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 down. You know what I mean? Like it still has those, but it's definitely its own thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I guess kind of in a similar vein. The next one's kind of similar in that aspect as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is "Ride the Sky" by Lucifer's Friend. They were a German band formed in 1970. This is just a fun fact about them. So Lucifer's Friend, which was released in 1970, they're self-titled, is considered this like big early metal album. Their next album was Where the Groupies Killed the Blues, and it's like a mix of prog and psychedelic rock. Their next album was I'm Just a Rock and Roll Singer, and it's straight up just radio rock, like fucking Boston or something.
Oh, hey. Hey, I love Boston, but definitely not metal.
Yeah, I'm not dogging it. It's just different. And then Banquet, their fourth album, is just jazz fusion.
Well, all fucking okay.
So Lucifer's Friend was like, you cannot define us. We're going to do whatever the fuck we want.
And hey, yeah, that's the thing. That's something like I think a lot of people are kind of snobbish about, where it's like, why isn't this album the same as the past 10 albums? I'm like, guys, like it's because musicians grow and change and adapt to what they want to do. Like it's not interesting that you just spit out the same shit every fucking time.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like their first one is my favorite, but still, I'm like you. I think it's cool and interesting that they did different stuff. They did, end up kind of coming back to a more metal sound, but by that time it was like the early 80s, so they did more of a speed metal kind of thing.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, well, I guess we can get into this one if you'd like.
Yeah, go for it.
So, first and foremost, I've just got in this song a couple call-outs for just, just screaming,
Oh, yeah.
Just vocalization in this song is pretty fun. But yeah, again, kind of similar in the vocalization to the last song. It's higher pitch. It's not as like powerful or growly, but it's a higher pitched kind of nice push on it. And my note I have here is that this song in particular sounds kind of like a heavier version of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, so, the horn piece, the da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it sounds like the fucking Get Smart theme.
No, well, it sounds a lot like Immigrant Song,
Yeah, okay, that was the other thing. It was the two, yeah.
So there's kind of, because the Immigrant Song was technically released first, but people have kind of gone back and forth like, okay, well, these were being recorded around the same time. It's possible, and they ran in the same circles, So people have said that it's possible that he kind of stole that hook from Lucifer's Friend, and I think part of the reason people say that is because they love to accuse Led Zeppelin of stealing a bunch of shit, which, like, in all fairness, I think that I do think that they did that some.
Probably.
But I don't think it was as rampant as people maybe think.
I'll say also, not probably, allegedly.
Yeah. And also, I do think it is pretty easy to kind of maybe both write the same kind of thing if you're doing something similar. And also, maybe one of them did just hear it from the other and didn't even think. Like, later it just popped in their brain and they thought they had wrote it,
Yeah, that's the whole thing too, with like passive plagiarism. Because like,
Yeah.
that was a whole debate. There's been a lot of artists where they're just like, oh yeah, it sounds so similar. And at one point, you have to be like, okay, it's one thing to have like a little hook that sounds really similar, but then it's another thing for like an entire verse or an entire phrase to have the same fucking melody. And at some point, like in this case, as a hook, I could see it going either way, right? But like some people just steal verses, and that shit's not cool.
Oh yeah. No, I'm just saying, like this one, I don't think it's damning either way, because some people are like, they're like, no, they stole it from Led Zeppelin. And I'm like, I mean, they're similar, but
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, in terms of an actual song goes, again, very kind of not so much high fantasy, but kind of celestial imagery here. We've got lines like, new eyes I got to find, Mars, Venus, and stars shaking their heads at me. No more todays. Tonight I'll be riding the sky. Again, I have a note here where literally just riding the sky is just like the cornerstone lyrics of fucking metal.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, Halloween has a song called Ride the Sky. Where,
Halloween, shut up.
Oh, dude, Halloween fucking rules. Don't you ever talk shit about Halloween. One thing I love.
The name.
Oh, yeah, no, that's one thing I love about Halloween is they really didn't take themselves seriously at all. So they would just have like the dumbest fucking songs just because they thought it was funny. But yeah, no, they have a song called Ride the Sky. I'm trying to there are other bands that have Ride the Sky. Like, this is not the only Ride the Sky.
Ride the lightning.
Yeah.
Ride the fucking lightning. But yeah, I like this song too. Not as much as the last one, I don't think. But there's some really cool imagery here. There's a nice line too, where it says, "The smile on his face turned me to stone. The words that he spoke wouldn't leave me alone," which kind of spoke to me slightly. Where it's like, yeah, I've had negative interactions with people. Everyone does, and it's like, it's funny how that shit kind of sits with you sometimes, and you're like, huh, maybe that's what they're getting out there. But I don't really know the overall meaning of all these lyrics. A lot of it is just kind of celestial imagery, but that line kind of seemed out of place to me.
Yeah, no, I get that. But yeah, I definitely hear kind of a Led Zeppelin kind of, and I do want to be clear. Obviously, that whole sound of the Led Zeppelin kind of sound was obviously big in this early metal. There's not as much in this playlist just because it's not something I like as much typically. But there's some of it, like this one, and then the Budgie song specifically, I think is pretty Led Zeppelin.
Yay, Budgies. We'll get to that. Yeah, man. I think this was a good one. Like I said, definitely, I like Sir Lord Baltimore a little bit more, I think, but this is still pretty competent. Interesting to hear, at least.
Dude, it's hard to beat Sir Lord Baltimore. I fucking love that band.
Yeah, his voice just took me fucking back. I was like, whoa. But yeah, cool. Anything else on that one there before we move on?
Yeah, I just another, I've been trying to sprinkle in why I think these are influential.
Sure.
So, this band specifically, Lucifer's Friend, Tim Baker, who was a guy from a band called Cirith Ungol, who, once again, never got super big or anything, but they are considered very, very early and very influential in the realms of both power metal and doom metal, which is a really unique combo. You don't see those two overlap very much.
Okay.
But anyway, he straight up said, like, yeah, we were just trying to emulate Lucifer's Friend. We just thought those guys were fucking awesome, and that's what we wanted to do. And I think that you can see how this could maybe be, especially like an early kind of idea of what power metal would be. I think that kind of makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. Because like you said, especially with the kind of heavier sound to it than the last one, I could see that branching both ways. I think the vocals are power metal from what I've heard, and like that riff is a little heavier. Or like the guitar in this one maybe is not so power metal. I don't know, but
yeah. But I just thought it was interesting, and I think I can definitely see why that would be influential to him and his work.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you ready for the next one?
Yeah, which would be, let's see, so forgive me, the band is called the Flower Traveling Band, and the song was called Satori, correct?
Yeah, this one was specifically Satori Part 1.
Okay, yes, part one. Sorry. Again, so first things first on this, I'll ask. Satori sounds like a Japanese word.
Yep,
Is this a Japanese band?
it is.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the way that they were formed in 1967 by a guy, and I'm so sorry if I pronounce this wrong. Yuya Uchida. So he was, I think, a big name in a lot of Japanese kind of pop and stuff like that at the time. He was friends with John Lennon, so he went and visited him in England. While he was
Oh.
while he was there, he heard hard rock stuff like Jimi Hendrix and Cream, and he was
Okay.
just like, he's like, this shit's awesome. I want to bring this to Japan. So the first kind of version or whatever of this band was just called The Flowers or Flower, one of the two. I don't remember. And their first album was called Challenge, and it's a very different lineup and sound versus like what you heard with this one. But it's just like this kind of psychedelic, like kind of hard rock in that vein of, like I said, Cream and Jimi Hendrix. And it's just covers of mostly blues songs where they
Oh.
specifically tried to emulate different Western rock bands. So it'll be like, oh, okay, this is a blues song. We're specifically trying to make this sound like if Jimi Hendrix covered that song. This one is supposed to be if Cream covered that song and stuff like that.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of a weird thing. That, like I said, kind of went through some different iterations. Eventually, they were heard by this Canadian rock band called Lighthouse. They invited them to Canada to kind of try and break through into the Western market because they were having success in Japan. And they had not put out an original album. They hadn't done any original music up to this point. But they were like,
At
we
all.
can't, none at all. But they were
Wow.
like, well, we can't really go to Canada with nothing in hand. We have to have something that we can show people. So they just very quickly slapped together an album. That was Satori. They recorded it in one day.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, and it
Jesus.
was
That,
it was
that's
it was. You go ahead.
no, that's crazy.
It was released in 1971, and if you just want to tell me a little bit about what you heard.
Yeah. So, basically, this starts off with some, I think, some vocalization to begin with, right? Again, the very first note I have is just
Yeah.
but so again, really high vocalizations to kind of begin with on this. So two things. Motherfucker, when he started singing, I legitimately thought that was Ozzy Osbourne for like a quarter second. I was like, "This is an Ozzy song," and I was like, "Wait, no, it's not." And his voice is very similar for my ears.
And I mean, there's a good chance that was on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they had been trying to emulate other bands.
Sure.
And I mean, this album is kind of very Black Sabbath,
Yeah.
But god damn, do those riffs just absolutely rip.
Yeah, so those riffs, so this is an interesting question for me because those riffs, the keys, the scales they're in, seem to be intentionally kind of so dark they're almost dissonant.
Yeah, so, and I mean, I don't know this for a fact because, I am not super learned on, all the nitty gritty stuff of music. But I will say that there's this thing called a tritone that is, I mean, kind of, at the beginning I was talking about how the, Marshall amps and kind of that distortion and that power was critical to heavy metal being, its own genre.
Yeah.
I think the tritone is equally as much of a thing that is kind of heavy metal's own thing in a way. Like,
Yeah.
jazz does it and all these other genres do it, but it is such a metal thing that like so much metal is built on it. And what I'm getting at is, as I understand, it's a chord where the notes are like three, like there's like three apart, like three notes apart basically. And
Okay.
it's supposed to sound dissonant.
Oh, okay. That dissonance is the correct term to use there.
Yeah, so it was actually
Okay.
like in medieval music, the tritone was like it was literally illegal for medieval musicians to use it because it just innately sounds evil. So they called it
Yeah.
they called it the devil in the music, and
Okay.
that's why metal just fucking loves it because it just sounds evil.
How interesting. Yeah, cause I definitely hear that. Now, my ears, my dumb major scale ears, like fucking high G and G major and C major, fucking sunshine asshole I am. Like that's just different for me. And I, like you said, it just, the dissonance there, I think I'm just not used to it all. I had a hard problem enjoying that personally, but I definitely understand, like you're getting at, that is what they're going for. I know it's intentional. It is not like an accident. It's just one of those things. I think it's preference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So definitely not shitting on it. But I think hearing the kind of theory behind it definitely reinforces to me, like, okay, there is even further reason behind this.
Yeah, yeah, and some people, one reason that some people are like, oh, nothing was metal before Black Sabbath is because the first song of their first album, which is funny enough is called Black Sabbath, on the album Black Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath, opens with the riff is built on a reverse tritone and just sounds really fucking evil. It's just bum, bum, and like
I'm gonna put that sound clip on everything now.
yeah, that's gonna be your ringtone. But no, like, and that's what I'm getting at. Like, this fucking riff is just so fucking like heavy and mean.
It's heavy,
and
yeah,
dirty and just like gritty. Like, I love this album so much because it's just so insanely like evil sounding, And like I said, came out in like 1971,
Yeah, especially in the 70s, probably definitely not in the mainstream. Because and that's not shitting. I'm just saying, like, popular music obviously wouldn't have entertained this. Probably, is that fair to say?
No, yeah, and I do think
that's not a diss on. It's not a diss on the artist. I'm just saying, like, you definitely, even today, like, you wouldn't hear this stuff like on the radio, pop radio.
Yeah, and I do think that that's part of the reason people are like, oh yeah, metal is just Black Sabbath. Because, and once again, I'm not dogging them. I'm not saying that they weren't, even the most influential band. But where it is, by nature, not really a huge market, it makes sense that there's going to be one big one that everybody likes, and then there's not that much room for anybody else in a way.
Sure.
So yeah, I do think that is fair. Like, this is not something that is necessarily meant to be like, bubblegum pop. And once again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but yeah, it is going for its own different thing,
Yeah, sure. So as far as the rest of the song goes, some kind of cool imagery. Charging through doors, going nowhere and everywhere. Just want to keep on moving and grooving, sharing my trip with everything. And I think, I could read that as kind of being like, when you're having a bad day, the precursor to that line being under rough skies, survey a day around. And it's like, if you're having a bad day, like, sometimes it's just nice to remind yourself, like, keep going forward. Just kind of keep enjoying what you can,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think there's definitely the reading of, like drug tripping.
Yeah, okay.
But, sharing my trip with everything.
Okay. Yeah.
And there is kind of this, because, we see a lot of this psychedelic influence in these psychedelic bands. A lot of people have kind of pointed to early heavy metal as like, oh, okay, so much of psychedelic music was all these positive, like, feelings around a drug trip, and then heavy metal came along, and it's supposed to kind of represent all of these, like, bad trips and, like, all these terrible experiences you can have,
Okay.
And, like, that's kind of what I get out of this one, because it is just, like, creeping doom,
I can see that.
in a way that, like, it just feels so huge, so, like, that's kind of what I got out of it, is, like, it is expressing this, like, very scary, almost drug trip kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think I think like I said, definitely definitely something that I can see the intent for. A couple of things I'm not a fan of myself, but that's just me. So overall, still cool to hear and understand the theory behind it.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing that I think is kind of cool about this band, and you don't really get to see it so much in a studio recording, but they, would purposefully put very few vocals in their songs because they liked the idea of having kind of this one big riff that they could improvise around.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, this song kind of does have a unique structure, and I think that's kind of where that comes from. Is they would, it was almost a jam band thing where they'd have this one big wicked riff, and they would kind of just play around with it and improvise.
A lot of these bands seem that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a reason that to this day, like, and I get that this could be said of a lot of genres, but man, metal is built on the riff. Like, if you come up with a good riff,
Yeah.
you're kind of set.
Yeah, I definitely see that. But cool. I guess anything else on this?
No, that's really all I'd say about Flower Traveling Band.
I did like the album cover for this one. It's kind of like I guess it's like a Japanese Buddha kind of symbol. And inlaid into that is like it's kind of like mythological scene from what I can tell.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Their earlier stuff was also kind of trying to be very provocative but in a different way. And it's not like explicit, but it's, like the whole band is on the cover naked and like everything's covered, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it is still kind of like pushing boundaries and supposed to be kind of shocking,
Yeah, I get that.
But like I said,
And at the end of the day, being naked, I mean, yeah, you're not hurting anybody.
yeah, like who cares?
You know.
Who cares? But also, it was like the late '60s Japan. You know what I mean? I imagine that probably was pretty wild.
Yeah. Okay. Well, shit. I guess speaking of jam bands, we'll move on to the next one here. I'm real curious. This is a band Toad. Song's called "Pig's Walk," or
Hell
as I like to call it, "Listen to that pig."
Listen to that pig and the way he walks.
All right. Before we get into it, I just want everyone to know. The lyrics to this song. It's gonna take me a few minutes. Everyone strap in, get some snacks. Just kind of, I'll do a little personal ASMR reading. Okay. So the lyrics are as follows: Listen to that pig, and the way it talks. Look at the way it talks, and the way it walks. That's the way they're taught, and that's the fucking whole song. That's it. Like
It's like 8 minutes long.
It's 8 minutes. So, okay. Wasn't expecting this shit. What the fuck is going on?
Man, I'm gonna be honest with you. They just fucking shred. That's why I love this song.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, as Matt said, they just fucking they say that in this kind of funky way. That's their first fucking verse. The only fucking verse. And then they just shred for fucking 8 minutes. And then they say literally. So I'll walk through here of the structure of what I've got. Album cover on this one is just a toad with the eye, and in the eyes inscribed the word in like 70s word art, toad. So pretty straightforward. Very bluesy. Tons of crunchy guitars. It's a really like running bass. It's really like a lot of movement on the bass. Sounds great. And then here's the comments I have. So I have, is this all the lyrics? And the answer is yes. So we have about a minute and a half of just jamming. The whole band is going. We have a wah pedal guitar solo for like 2 minutes, which colloquially call Tom Morello's birth sound.
The doctor is like, "Ma'am, you have to push," and she like strains, and you hear,
Wah wah wah. Fucking. So as Tom Morello's being born, yeah, you have all the lyrics. They're gone. I made a note of that. Okay, that's actually all the lyrics. It's been 3 minutes. No one said anything. Then they keep jamming. I put this is some Starsky and Hutch ass shit. That's all I have for that. And then I have blues breakdown into a fucking minute and a half long drum ass solo, which I'm going to colloquially call Phil Collins being born. And then, yeah, it just, there's some secret hidden lyrics, which are the fifth line of the song. That's not listed on the official lyric sheet. I had to add those in myself. It's a secret lyric line for everybody listening. But and I literally have at that point in the song, oh shit, there's more lyrics. And that's it. You get one line, so fuck off. But it's literally just a fucking good ass jam for fucking 8 minutes almost, and that's fucking it. What's a pig? What's the pig? What's it referring to? Fuck if I know. Just fucking roll with it, I guess.
So Toad was a Swiss band. They were.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. They were.
That explains everything.
Yeah. Man, what else do they have to do in Switzerland? But they were formed in 1970. This is from their self-titled album, came out in 71. I straight up just, like, they just fucking shred. That's honestly the only reason I picked this one was, and I mean, obviously, shredding is a big thing in metal. Long stretches of instrumentals, it's a big thing in metal. So I do think this is kind of indicative of a lot of stuff that would come. But yeah, dude, I fucking love this song.
All jokes aside, this was a fun song. I actually really enjoyed it. There's something nice. I mean, there's a reason people like the second half of Freebird. This is the second half of any kind of like long instrumental song where they just fucking jam for 5 minutes. This is what they're doing here. Why the fuck not? I can definitely appreciate it. This is definitely a lot more like kind of bluesy. This is more strictly blues from what I could tell.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. It's a pretty bluesy ass song.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much fucking else to say. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. This is just a little fun fact. This was they went to England for this to be produced by Martin Birch. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he became a really big name in heavy metal to the point that he exclusively worked with Iron Maiden for like all of the 80s. Like he was just their producer.
Oh, wow.
So this was kind of an earlier thing that he worked on. So he's kind of had his hand in metal for a really long time, which I just thought was kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny how bands you don't think connect to each other, you know?
Yeah. This isn't even the only album he produced on this list, which is kind of cool.
Oh, okay, shit, we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to recap that again for another 20 hours, anything else on this one?
No, I'm like you. I don't really know what it means. I mean, the obvious reading is just about the police, calling them pigs and being like... I
can see that. Like, that's the way they're taught. Yeah, like, they're taught to be that way, yeah.
Yeah, like, that's kind of what I get out of it, but I don't know if that's what the Swiss call police. I don't fucking know.
Maybe they're actually talking about pigs.
Yeah,
who the fuck knows?
Maybe it's fucking Animal Farm and he's talking about the pigs from that. I don't fucking know what he's talking about. All I know is that they fucking shred for 5 minutes.
Moving on. Sorry.
No, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I have intentionally kind of put these in the order of release.
Yes, I did notice that. I kind of got that vibe, I think, because I definitely noticed kind of 60s sound not being there so much later on.
Yeah. So this is a song called Crash Course in Brain Surgery by Budgie. They were a Welsh band formed in 1967. This is this is a single. That's just the single was Crash Course in Brain Surgery. They also had a self-titled album that both came out in 71. We can speak about kind of what you got out of it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I included this song because I do think that there are sects of metal that are very indebted to Budgie and really love Budgie. It's a little too Led Zeppelin for me, if I'm honest. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it's not bad,
Okay. Yeah, and so I think honestly we might be on the same page. I definitely don't love this song. But some of my biggest notes are as follows. First of all, for those who don't know what budgies are, budgies or budgeriers are parakeets, the little tiny parrots that are blue, green, and white and yellow and standard colors like that. I love parakeets. Shout out to Bagel, Jello, Tofu, and Pesto, and Holiday and Kiwi and all of those little babies. We love you guys. But yes, parakeets are amazing. Anyway, soapbox. I love parrots. I always say it.
You want to know something kind of funny?
Oh, what's that?
So they chose the name Budgie because they wanted to do like hard rock, heavy metal, and have a name that just sounded nothing like that. So they were like, little Budgies, that's good. But originally they were 2-ton Budgie, and then they just shortened it to Budgie.
Oh shit, 2-ton Budgie's great too, though. Damn.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of prefer it. But yeah. I do really enjoy that. They just thought it was funny to have a name that did not represent their music at all, and I think that's funny.
Yeah, no, but that's cool. I think it's fun when bands have fun with their like mascots and logos like that. But yeah, so Crash Course and Brain Surgery. Yeah, you said very Zeppelin. I definitely got that vibe. The lyrics on this one, I was kind of looking into a little more. Maybe I was trying to glean a little more than I could have. These seemed a little more like personal than a lot of the other stuff. It was just kind of like fantasy imagery, you know? Like in this one, it's like, look inside, you'll see the words are cutting deep inside my brain. Oh, they're burning, quickly turning. A knife of words is driving me insane. But yeah, so it's a kind of common theme where it's like words can fuck you up just as bad as a lot of other stuff can. Like just bad interactions, trauma can really fuck you up, even if it's not physical, you know?
Yeah, and even, our emotions can really fuck you up. Now the wicked lance of fear, driven from my heady mouth and brain, Crash Course and Brain Surgery, has stopped the bloody knife of love again. Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of read that as like, we need to stop ourselves. Like, one of the most human defense mechanisms is like, you stop yourself from feeling anything to allow yourself to not feel the bad thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Again, cool to hear like in this kind of heavy rock sense, like that kind of personal, introspection maybe a little bit, which is nice and healthy. Because unfortunately, you do get people who nowadays don't acknowledge, emotions and mental health and all that stuff, which is incredibly important. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the lyrics of this one, honestly. I think there's some of the better lyrics on this list. Not as good as, what Toad was doing, but what can be. But no, I do like that. Like I said, just the sound is a little too Zeppelin for me, if I'm honest. But sure. I did think it was appropriate to include it. Did you have anything that you really want to say about it?
No, like I said, like there's the words, the lyrics on this one, like you said, were kind of some of the stronger ones for me as far as like an introspective look on this list. There's one more I miss. The art of fighting words to conquer life. It's like, it's a day-to-day struggle sometimes dealing with your own thoughts, and it'll be okay. It's hard some days though, you know.
Yeah, but I thought that I should include them because they were a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands. Were like, yeah, Budgie, we just wanted to be Budgie. Budgie, we're the guys.
That's cool.
To the point that, because they weren't that big in their day in the 70s, but then come the 80s when the new wave of British heavy metal is like, those guys are huge. Everybody then discovers Budgie and how like influential they were on that sound. And Budgie just kind of gets a second wind and like gets way bigger than they were before. And that... I think this is true. I think they were the first metal band to play beyond the Iron Curtain. They played in Poland during the Soviet era, which is crazy. So apparently they have just this huge following to this day in Poland. People just fucking love Budgie.
That's cool, huh?
Yeah, but anyways, so that's kind of why I include them. I think they are pretty influential, even though they aren't my favorite.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like you said, is it bad? No. But like, is it my favorite? No, either. So but I will give it props for the lyrics.
Yeah. Like I said, pretty cool. Just not really my favorite on here, but to the point that I was kind of like, well, should I include it because I don't love it that much? And I was like, well, for what I'm doing, I think that it is good for you to hear. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think it makes sense.
But yeah, are you? Sorry, did you have anything else?
No, I was going to say the same thing. You ready for the next one?
Yeah, yeah. So next we have "Pull Away" slash "So Many Times" by Dust.
Yes. Go on.
Oh, and I was just gonna do the normal little rundown. They were
Sorry.
formed in 1969 in New York City. They just released two albums: a self-titled release in 1971 and "Hard Attack" in 1972. This is from "Hard Attack," and people.
God damn it. Heart attack.
y- y-
Shut off.
Yeah, I know. People specifically look at Heart Attack as like this pillar of early metal. Like, not that they were big in their day, but now people who are kind of like me and are kind of like metal historians or whatever.
Yeah.
If you can find a copy of Heart Attack on vinyl, that shit's worth money because people are just like this is such an important piece of history. You know what I mean?
That's cool to know.
Yeah. So, this is definitely the one that I picked here is definitely not the heaviest song on that album because it does get pretty heavy with stuff like they have a song called "Suicide" that's really heavy, and this big anthem kind of like heavy song called "Learning to Die," and
Oh, Lord.
they're honestly way heavier, but like this song is just so good. Like I love this song so much.
Okay, yeah. So this was one of my favorites as well on this list. Okay, so first fucking note. This is the song, if I'm wrong, where is this the one that starts off with a fucking piano?
No, I think you're thinking of "Elf."
What am I thinking of here? My God. Hang on a minute. Am I mixed up again?
Yeah, are you thinking of "Nevermore" by Elf? The one's like dun 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 dun.
Wait a minute. I've got it pulled up here. Is this the one? Sorry, this. Okay, no, yeah. It's still starts off soft. That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
like acoustic
we'll
guitar.
backtrack. Yeah, sorry. So it starts off with acoustic guitar, and the first thing I have here is no way in hell this is heavy metal. Like no way. And I expected it to change, and it did. And so this whole song is really just pretty straightforward, like about relationship ending because of a partner having infidelity, and this guy's like singing like, "Fuck you, you cheated on me so many times. I've listened to you so many fucking times, but I'm out of here. Fuck you."
And
It's pretty. That's pretty much all there is to it.
yeah, and I kind of like the way it does it because it like in its soft moments, it's waiting for something that is never coming. So I guess I'll be on my way. I know
Yeah.
it's over. We could never make it. So I guess I'll just pull away. And in those, it's like this really soft kind of ballad acoustic. And then
Yeah.
when it gets angry is when he's like, "Girl, you've
Yeah.
been cheating and you've been mistreating, and I'm doing the best I can." So like I think it's kind of an interesting look at how these breakups can feel when you're just like feeling sad about it and like
Sad and angry. Yes.
yeah, it's like because even no matter who's at fault or whatever, like there are moments where that doesn't matter and you're just sad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good human way to look at it because, like, yeah, I mean, sometimes there is a clear fault. Sometimes people are shitty to each other, and that's we shouldn't look over that. But at the same point, like, yeah, even if somebody fucks you over, like, you still have to feel sad about that. Like, it's not just anger that will take over. That's a humans are more complex. We're this relationships are more complex than that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and you can definitely disagree. I think that it kind of like this feels like a good breakup song to me in that it does give the kind of emotional honesty of both sides where it's like vulnerable and sad. And then sometimes the anger takes over when you're like, no, it was all their fault. And like they did all these things. And then it does bring it back where it's like sad again, where he's just like, oh, she's leaving. She said she's never coming back. And like, you know what? I hope that's true because I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, and I think that's at some point. And obviously, every situation is different, right? But like, again, it just shows how it's hard no matter how it goes down, like you said. And one thing I do note here from a sonic perspective is this acoustic breakdown. Like, every now and then it goes into that kind of softer, like you said, with the acoustic guitar, and he's kind of like lamenting emotionally, and then the other parts are angry. I have that same note, and that kind of made me feel a little bit of like a Kansas kind of vibe in like in like that kind of like not only the singing style and the melody, but like that kind of breakup,
Yeah, no,
breaking up of the song.
yeah, no, I think that's fair. I could definitely see that. And we could, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here but the reason I chose this song specifically, not only just because I think it's such a good song, like I just love that song, but I think that their inclusion of kind of folk and pop in this kind of hard rock heavy metal was, for this early, was like they were kind of the only ones doing that shit. And
okay.
Alice Cooper is always credited as inventing the power ballad. I think Dust kind of could be a contender. Like, this shit sounds like a power ballad to me, No,
honestly, that's what I'm getting at. Where it's like this feels like something like Boston or Kansas could have cranked out, and I really do enjoy it. I think it's got some really good melody. I do have here, like, guitar solos seem mandatory for this genre at this point in time. Seems like you just need to have someone shred for about 20 or 30 seconds on every song.
Man, that's to this day, heavy metal is like that. Like, I'm trying to think. So grindcore tends to not have guitar solos, and I'll be honest, I don't listen to that much grindcore partly because of that. Because, like, man, I'm a simple man. I want a fucking guitar solo in every song I listen to.
Nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, so the song's pretty good about that. It's got some great instrumentals. I also kind of drew a parallel again to Black Sabbath's Children of the Sea. Had that same kind of, like, soft and then hard energy,
Yeah, and the next song I think kind of does something similar, and that will maybe kind of explain where the Black Sabbath Children of the Sea maybe came from. So I think that's cool.
Okay. And yeah, so I guess kind of, I think we already hit this before, but like the album art on this one, I mentioned before, similar to Blue Cheer, is a band portrait with some, like, filigree around it. Like, it's fine.
So unfortunately, you did not get the good album cover, because that is an album cover of a re-release of both of their albums together. The original Heart Attack album cover is, I can't think of his name right off, but he's the guy that did all the, like, really crazy, like, fantasy book covers and stuff that have that very distinctive style. But it's like these giants on a mountaintop, like, swinging their axes. Like, it fucking rules.
Oh, hell yeah. But yeah, I think I think the sound's good. I think it's a good message where it's like, if you're in a bad situation and it's just not working, you're not happy, just leave. Don't need to leave before you hurt each other in whatever aspect that is. Safety is important. Happiness is important. Sometimes relationships just need to end, and that's okay.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's kind of cool and emotionally honest in a way that maybe heavy metal isn't always, No,
yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think you see that a lot too. Like, for fuck's sake, we have songs on the radio singing about how to 69. And it's like, shut the fuck, shut up. Like, just stop.
It's in the name. Like, why do we need a song to instruct us on that one? Like,
it's fucking crazy. Anyway, but no, yeah, I think that's a fair reading, because, like, obviously, like, every situation is different. It's important. Communication is always important, no matter how any relationship goes. But at the same point too, it's okay for things to end if they have to, right? But yeah, I think it's important. I think it's nice to see emotional kind of honesty in that aspect. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Did you have anything else you want to say about Dust, or are you ready to move on?
I think we're ready to move on to one. I think here is Elf and their song Nevermore, right?
Yep. So I'm sure that this isn't going to be a surprise, but I'll give you a little hint as to where this is going.
Motherfucker, I knew it as soon as you said hell and fire burning higher. I said I have a note here, and I said, wait, is this fucking Dio? And then, like, 5 lines later, I'm like, it is fucking Dio.
Yeah, when he just,
it has to be.
When he just belts out Nevermore. Like, no, yeah, that's quintessential Dio right there.
Yeah, I was like, either I'm imagining shit or this ain't real. So, okay, that's what I figured. Cool.
So, Elf was formed in 1967 in New York. They emerged from the dissolution of a band called Ronnie Dio and the Prophets.
Oh, yeah.
Their original title, which I'm going to be honest, their first band name was so much better than what they went with. They were originally called the Electric Elves, which fucking rules.
Hell yeah.
But shortened it to Elf in 1972. Don't know who made that decision, but they should have been fucking fired. So they released their debut in 1972. That's what this is from. It's from their debut self-titled album. The album was produced by Roger Glover and Ian Pace of Deep Purple, and they opened for Deep Purple pretty consistently. Like, they were kind of just Deep Purple's opening act for a good while there in the early 70s. And that's kind of just how they made their money, just opening for Deep Purple.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that relationship budded from that.
Yeah, so that's kind of how Dio got connected with these guys, and I will get into what happened next here in a minute. If you want to go ahead and tell me what you thought of the song.
Okay, so first of all, this one, I hate to sound like a fucking Dio stan, but I fucking feel like I have to be here. This one just fucking rules.
Dude,
I fucking love this song.
I don't care what anybody says. Dio was just so good at everything he did. Like,
I immediately the piano hits to the beginning, and I was just like, oh shit, this is gonna be like really, really like emotional. And I'm like, oh okay, here we go. And like I said, it's there's a line here where it's like, can't remember how I got from here to there. Isn't any reason. Plain and simple, I can't recall anymore. Would be misleading. Lead me on. And it's kind of like this. I can almost take that as how do we get so far in life without realizing where we're going? And then we take a step and look back, and you're like, how the fuck did I even get here? Like, how did this even happen? And then we just kind of accept that and move on. Like, and that's kind of just like an eventuality for a lot of people in life, where it's just kind of like, I never thought I'd be here 5 years ago, but here the fuck I am. And it's like, well, all I can fucking do is just kind of go forward, lead the way.
yeah.
And that's the kind of way I read that.
And it's done in that classic Dio way where he's going to, like, say it in the most dramatic way possible. Like, he's not going to just say that. He's going to be like... And the way he delivers everything is amazing. Like, there's so much... His delivery... And I know that I'm just the biggest Dio fan on the planet, but the way he delivers everything is just so perfect to me, because he just hits all these like emotional notes perfectly, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like I said, the next line, he says, hell and fire burning higher. Now I can see the ever after. And my note for that here is just like that there's nothing else that could be but Dio.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to say about the album is it is just all over the place. So like there's this one that's like a hard rock, like operatic ballad with like the piano and the soaring guitars and Dio just losing his mind. But then there's one song called Dixie Lee Junction, which is just like a southern rock song where Dio goes, these old boots will keep me walking to a place I'd rather be. Way down on a mountaintop, down in Tennessee. And it's just, like, so beautiful. Like, it's just so fucking good. And then it'll just be, like, these fucking, like, boogie-ass songs. Like, you just, from song to song, you don't know what the fuck it's going to be.
Hell yeah, Dio. Well, you can do no wrong unless he did something wrong, which in that case, fuck you, Dio.
Yeah. You know, I kind of expect it of most celebrities. I'm like, what fucked up thing they do? I would legitimately be sad if I heard that Dio had done something bad. I obviously wouldn't be like, no, he wouldn't do that. I just be like, fuck Dio, you really let me down.
Yeah. But so going on with the song, a couple other interesting lines. You don't hear me in the... Sorry. It says, clock is moving only while I see. You don't hear me in the laughter, nevermore. And that's kind of like, I've got a note here where it's like, yeah, that's how many times have you like been in a crowd of people who are enjoying themselves and you just can't because of whatever's happening in your life, you know?
Yeah.
Like I got here, it's like you're part of a crowd, but you're not participating as part of the crowd.
Yeah, no, that definitely is an interesting feeling of being surrounded by people and being very lonely, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then
there's a great lyric. We'll get to that. Maybe we'll talk about them. But there's a great lyric by a Descendants song or / All, the band called All, and it's like he says, my father was a lonely man in a crowded room. And it's like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And I do love these lyrics, which it's what he repeats a couple times to close out the song. And the way he delivers it is so good. But clutching to a bundle in the night, nobody knows. Leaping dogs of winter on the fight, and everyone goes.
It's, yeah. It's Dio. I mean, what do you expect? He's just gonna fucking belt that out and make you feel like you're just like in a fantasy realm. Like he's like Dio sings. I'm just like I'm in Skyrim. I'm like, okay, where am I?
Oh man, yeah, I love Dio. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about the song, or did you want me to give the kind of what happened and why I wanted to include it and all that?
No, I think big thumbs up for me. Yeah, I really. There is a cool part where they on the second clutching to a bundle in the night. He says that the guitar matches his melody, playing over his voice. And it sounds really cool. Just thumbs up again for me. It just seems like Dio has this like aura of just music around him where everything's just so good.
Yeah, man, I genuinely love everything that man did. Like even the stuff that people are like, "Oh, he was 80 and it wasn't that good anymore." I'm like, "Fuck you, it was still amazing." Dio was ageless. But anyway, so it was they opened for Deep Purple. It was produced by those Deep Purple guys. So when Richie Blackmore left Deep Purple, so the guitarist of Deep Purple, who is another just like guitar god, he basically, so it's like the dumbest fucking reason he left Deep Purple. He wanted to do a cover of this song called Black Sheep of the Family, and everybody else in Deep Purple was like, that song kind of sucks, we don't want to do that. And he's like, fuck you, I'm going to have my own band and we're going to do Black Sheep of the Family. So he was just like, hey, Elf, do you want to be my band now? And they were like, hell yeah, we want to be your band. You're like the biggest name in hard rock guitar. And he's like, okay, well, I'm your guitarist now. And they're like, okay, well, what about our guitarist? He's our buddy. He's like, I don't fucking care. I'm your guitarist now. And
oh, no.
They just fired him. Oh. Which on one hand really sucks. But at the same time, if I was playing intramural football and like, I don't know, fucking Tim Tebow came over and was like, hey, I'll be your quarterback, I would be like, yeah, dude, get the fuck out of here. Tim Tebow's our quarterback now. So like, I get it. It was a good career move, but it does make me kind of sad for that guy because I don't think he did anything after this, unfortunately.
Oh, no. That's, hey.
Because there were...
shit happens.
Some guys in Elf went on to do different things. One of them... was in some bands with people who went on to do Manowar, so he made a career of it.
Yeah.
But like this guy specifically, I don't think he did anything else, which sucks.
Damn. No, but yeah, I it's one of those things. Like I'm not always super familiar with the music industry and how it works and all of that, but I don't know. It's you want to think you'd be the good guy, right? You want to think like if I'm fucking in a band and a guitar. And then like Matt is like singing and like, oh yeah, we're having a great time. And then Slash is just like, hey bro, you mind if I fucking just take over? And I'm just like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, I'm not a professional guitarist. Get me out of here. I get it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be mad either. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, that dude's better than me. It is what it is. Another little fun fact, Dio actually plays the bass on this song.
Oh, cool. So album art on this one, it's just like a little like elf gremlin man sneering at the camera. Is that Dio?
I'm not trying to be mean when I say this because Dio is not a conventionally attractive man. It does kind of look like Dio. I don't know if that was intentional and I hope it was because if so, that's very cool.
Yeah.
If not, then I don't know if somebody's being mean or something. But yeah, I think it's supposed to be Dio because it kind of looks like Dio.
Yeah, so I was wondering. I was like, okay. But cool. Anything else on this one?
No. That's kind of have a little fun facts about it. Like this is the last album that Dio was not credited as Dio. He was credited as his birth name on this one.
Oh.
Just because he wanted his parents to be able to see their name on an album,
Oh, that's sweet.
But yeah, so after, and like he already had the moniker Dio, he'd had that for quite a while. But like I said, he was just like he wouldn't do that for them. But this was the last thing that he was not listed as Ronnie James Dio on.
Okay, cool to know.
Okay, yeah, if you're ready to move on, I am ready.
All right, so moving on to the band Wishbone Ash with the song Warrior.
Oh yeah, man, this is another one that I just love to pieces. Wishbone Ash. I'm gonna be real with you. This might be my least favorite song on that album, which is partly why I picked it, because I'm definitely gonna make you listen to Argus, and I wanted you to have some surprises still.
Okay, yeah, sure. So with this, I enjoyed it. I found this one to be fun. I kind of made a note here. Almost sounds kind of like a Leonard Skinner blues riff they're starting off with, you know?
So Leonard Skinner was heavily influenced by them.
Really?
As the list of people who are heavily influenced by Wishbone Ash is huge, and I will tell you why. But so they were a British band. They were formed in 1969. This is off of their third album, Argus, which is kind of like their big one, you know? And that was 72. I mean, this is not really a metal song. They weren't really a metal band. But they did something that was hugely influential, and a ton of bands have done it since. And they're kind of the ones, I'm not going to say they were the first ones to do it, but they were the first ones to really explore it in that way. Do you have any guess what that might be?
God, let me see if I have any notes. I mean, is it like the vocal harmonies?
No, it's the twin lead guitar harmony. So Guitarmony.
Oh, Guitarmony. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so Guitarmony, that shit's Wishbone Ash.
Really?
Yeah, they're just hugely influential in a lot of ways, but specifically to metal. In a Guitar World interview, Steve Harris from Iron Maiden said, "I think if anyone wants to understand Maiden's early thing, in particular the harmony guitars, all they need to do is listen to Wishbone Ash's Argus album."
Okay, yeah. Now that you say that, I definitely can hear it. Because like when I think of Guitarmony, I think of Thin Lizzy. I think of like Boston. I think of a lot of other bands from that era, like Allman Brothers. Like there's a lot of good guitar, like you said, like Guitarmonies. But I never knew either like where, if there was a start to it, or if it was just kind of like a thing that happened, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, probably the Yardbirds did it in the 60s.
Okay.
But in like a much more limited kind of capacity, and not in this kind of like soaring rock kind of way.
Soaring, sweeping solos. I get that, yeah.
I think this is a good example of that. It's not even the best example on the album, but like I said, my favorite songs on the album I kind of wanted to save for later. So that's why I did Warrior. And also it's kind of the heaviest one on the album, so I thought that was appropriate as well.
Oh, really? Okay. But yeah, I mean overall song kind of this very medieval almost kind of feel and imagery. Where it's like, like we're in the valley, we'll gather there in our surrender, and we'll turn our plows into swords by tomorrow, and be stronger in our danger. Definitely, like I said, I got this kind of medieval vibe from it.
Yeah, and some people even call it a concept album because, the second half is all kind of medieval stuff. There's, like the next song is Lay Down the Sword, and it's kind of a companion piece to this where it's like, okay, this is after the battle. We need to leave all this behind us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's all about like kings and battles and all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, fucking the album art, even you've got goddamn Mesmer the Impaler standing there.
Little fun fact about that. Apparently, to this day, no one has any fucking clue who is wearing that armor on the cover. All the guys in the band are just like, the label just gave us the picture. We don't know who the fuck that is. And once again, I don't know how true this is, but it is a persistent rumor that George Lucas took inspiration for Darth Vader's design off of this cover.
Really?
And you can kind of see it. The helmet is kind of Darth Vader.
Now that I have it pulled up here, now that I think about it, yeah, I can kind of. I mean, obviously, you could also look at samurai helmets in any capacity, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know if that's true. Even the lead singer of the band, somebody's asked him, and he's like, I can't confirm or deny that. I don't fucking know what George Lucas does.
Fucking weird ass. Okay, yeah, it's cool though. So as far as the rest of the song goes here, yeah, I enjoyed it. Kind of this very like, again, very like medieval. It's like, I'd have to be a warrior, a slave I couldn't be, a soldier and a conqueror, fighting to be free. And it's just a very like, yeah, it's a very just kind of high fantasy, like almost like a war march song. It definitely elicits that feeling of like,
Yeah.
like rise up, you know.
Yeah, and these dudes definitely fucking shred. Like, I know that
Yeah.
I've said that about like every band, but like them in particular, it's, I mean, maybe one of my favorite guitar albums, period, which is, I think, I don't know. I love the guitars on this album.
Sure. Yeah, no, they're very good. And again here, I called it out here. Like obviously it's a rhyming scheme, but like warrior. So those last 4 lines I just read is the ending words are warrior, be, conqueror, free, and it's always like this warrior, be, conqueror, free. And it, again, gives that fucking powerful vowel sound. You can fucking elongate. You can do vibrato with it, and I'm seeing that here again. And it's like you could always, I think the motif I see a lot is that they will blend the word into those vowels, and that works fine. It's not a problem, but it's just something I've noticed. It's interesting to me. And you think when it comes to like rhyming and lyrics, how often you don't think about that, because even in today's pop radio, like slant rhymes exist, other shit exists on the radio. Unfortunately, there's some pop artists out there who fucking just fuck words into a goddamn phrase and they don't fit, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah. And now that you say it, because that's not something I'd ever really thought about, but now that you say it, like, you know, time will pass away, and it, like, is this a very, like, powerful big one, and then the next one is time will guard our secret, and it, like, brings it down, and then I'll return again to fight another day, and, like, so, yeah. That's when they're going big, so yeah, you're definitely right, is, like, the vowels is when they're really pushing it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any, you know, rhyme or reason to that, just something I've noticed, but yeah, like I said, overall, cool song. I definitely want to hear more from Mesmer's band. So,
oh yeah, man. No, Argus is. So I don't know. I think I mentioned this in another episode of the podcast. Even at one point. Oh, I did, because at one point there were like 3 albums that I was like, I need to get Tiberi to listen to these 3 albums, because I think that they kind of are like, all of my musical tastes are kind of within these 3 albums. Argus is one of them.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to hear more then, because I liked what I heard here.
Oh yeah, and like I said, I think this is the worst song on the album, but I still think it's fantastic. You know.
Good. Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess moving on from that, are you ready for the next one?
Yeah. So it is the band Bang, and it is their song, Lions Christians.
Yeah, my note on the title, I just put, uh-oh. I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to trash the church. Here we go. No.
No, it kind of is the opposite of that, honestly.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? So yeah, I kind of wanted you to maybe get some insight on this, because my initial notes on this were kind of like, you know, this is medieval imagery, like, and it's almost like I said, pro-church. So basically the song is like elaborating on like kind of this conflict between the church and the pagans and this, whatever they are. Again, a very medieval feel to it. And it's almost sung from the purpose, from the stance of the church, right?
Yeah, well, what I get out of this is like early Christians under Roman rule. So like, you know, we all denied their pagan ways. We must suffer their deadly sport. It might take hours and it might take days. Our time on earth is growing short. So it's like, you know, when the Romans would torture and kill Christians.
Okay.
So like that's what I'm getting out of it, because like they would like throw them into the fucking Coliseum with lions and shit.
Got it.
So that's what I get out of it, is like the early, you know, like early Christians and their persecution under the Romans. And it's kind of just like, you know what's really fucking metal? That these people just like died for that shit. they're like, that's metal as fuck.
Yeah, it's fucking wild, the shit that's happened. God, we're crazy as a fucking species. Yeah, so again, I definitely hear kind of a it's definitely a little bit of a dirtier blues and maybe a little bit more Ozzy in the voice again. I keep using those as descriptors. Obviously, they're not stealing it, but I hear that kind of parallel with the vocals there, maybe.
Yeah. No, they're definitely considered like early doom metal. So yeah, that's definitely the same kind of ballpark.
Perfect.
And just a little bit of info on them. They were formed in Philadelphia in '69. The first album they recorded was called... Yeah, I know. The first album we need to hear that song so I know what that is. The first album they recorded was Death of a Country, which was recorded in '71. But the label was just like, fuck this album. So they just shelved it because they're like, this isn't going to fucking sell. This is weird. And in all fairness, they're kind of right. But it was shelved by the label because they thought it wouldn't be commercially viable. They just made them record another album.
Well, Jesus. Wow.
And that was their self-titled album, which came out in '72. That's what this song is off of that. They did end up releasing their first album in 2004. And I gotta agree with the record label. It's just very weird and kind of not that great. It's just like if Pink Floyd was really sad, basically. So like it, and I know that sounds like, oh, that might be kind of cool, but I wasn't a big fan of it when I listened to it. I think this album's a lot cooler than their first one that was never released until 2004.
That's good to hear, because you never want to regret the first one not getting out when you wanted it to, right? So it's cool to hear that this one's, in your opinion at least, better, right?
Yeah, I mean, this one's definitely a lot more of a straightforward kind of metal sound, where that one was kind of like a dark psychedelic kind of thing almost.
Yeah.
So like I said, like Depressed Pink Floyd is kind of the vibe I got, and it's also this weird concept album about like the fall of countries being destroyed. So it opens with this. Like fucking movie phone voice, just like, the bombs are falling, mankind is divided. Like, you know what I mean?
Make sure to pick up your cigarettes and smoke a pack today.
Protect your lungs from the radiation. Smoke 7 packs.
The Christians don't smoke, but we do.
Yeah. Give the cigarettes to the lions. That'll get them. We're playing the long game. But yeah, so honestly, I think this sound that they did was kind of cooler. But yeah, did you have anything else that you want to say? Like, I picked this one just because, like, it's just sound like the delivery and the guitar is just like really dirty and evil sounding,
Yeah, no, and that's kind of all I have too. Is for sonic perspective, it's definitely dirtier, heavier, a little more muddy kind of feeling to it. The only other line I wanted to touch on was, our fear of God was stronger than our fear of death or fear of man. Which my comment on that is, yeah, mankind has fucking done some stupid shit. Mankind scares me more than anything.
Oh yeah, no, I'm fully convinced that the reason that we survived and all the other fucking hominids didn't is because we were just the most evil ones. It's not because we were the strongest. It's not because we were the smartest. It's because we were the most willing to be just super fucked up all the time.
Yeah.
Like the cavemen. The cavemen were just like, hey man, you want some? I have some food. You want some? And we're like, I have to have all the food. And we just fucking stabbed them.
Hey, speaking of which, it's time for the next song.
Oh yeah. I do wanna know just the badass delivery of "No more pain and wondering why."
Jesus God. So moving on to the next song, by Jerusalem, "Primitive Man," or as they say many times in the song, "Primitive Man."
Okay, so
funny.
I'm not gonna lie, it is hard to find much information on Jerusalem. They were British. They put out one album in '72, which is this one. Ian, once again, another dude from Deep Purple was the producer. Ian Gillan. I found this quote that he said about it. Apparently it was on the back of the album. And this isn't all of it, but I thought it was actually a pretty good description of the sound. This is the first album by Jerusalem, a band which excites me very much. They are rough, raw, and doomy, with their own strong identity. As they are young and a bit green, they don't follow many rules, so their material is almost crude, but still immensely powerful in content. And honestly, that's just a good description. Like, it is kind of crude. It's very doomy, you know? It's just a fucking wall of sound, which I think for 72 is pretty wild.
Yeah. And it's like I said, I'm laughing about the delivery of Primitive Man because out of context it is pretty funny. But in context of the song, like it's definitely, the song is much more like kind of more raw in that sense, like you just mentioned, where it's heavy with the vocals almost kind of like that kind of head screaming, you know, where it's like ah. It's so yeah. I definitely. I don't know, like I said, it definitely didn't feel as like, how do I say it, sweeping or epic as like a Dio song has in this list, but it feels a lot more like, I don't know, like it's what would you describe that as?
I mean, yeah, I do think doomy is a good descriptor, and like I said, all the stuff that he said is pretty apt, but no, there definitely is because, like, the interesting thing about doom metal is it kind of is a lot of things at this point. Because some of it is just this incredibly heavy, like, huge, just, like, chugging riffs. But, like, so it's all kind of slow. Is the, you know, to be a doom song, you have to be kind of slow. But some of it is, like, they just sound like an early 70s rock band. And, like, that's what they're going for, is they're just trying to sound like a 70s rock band. Some of it is so incredibly heavy and it's just this massive wall of sound, and that's kind of what I think this is. Like, that kind of doom is going back to Jerusalem, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think I when you say doom metal, if I look at like the doom metal context and what I know now, like, yeah, I can see like that's why it's slower and the pronunciation of words is the way it is. Okay.
Yeah, and it is kind of goofy the way Primitive Man.
Oh God. As far I literally just have like 3 comments that say that. It's just like elongated versions of Primitive Man.
I feel like the man from Hymndall would really approve of Primitive Man. He might be the Primitive Man.
Primitive Man from Hymndall.
And like the actual lyrics, I think that in one breath they're incredibly stupid. Like, just aggressively stupid. But at the same time, I actually kind of like them because it's just like, we should respect the earth. We shouldn't fuck everything up. We should just do what feels good. Yeah. So it's just kind of like this call to hedonism. Like,
yeah, and it's like an ancient man was always like was always fucking lustful, but ancient woman saw beauty in the dove. Like they lived their lives with love. And modern men, yeah, you're still fucking evil. Like, you have a fuck you. Which, yeah, amen, brother.
Yeah, primitive man, you knew what life was. Primitive man, you can tell us because primitive man respected the earth's trust. Like, okay, so in a way, it's kind of dumb because, like, there are also lines like, ancient woman with the men did play. It's like, okay, but
yeah, all right.
Like I said, it's both aggressively stupid, and I also kind of like it. You know what I mean? I can't decide how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's a nice message where it's just like, be nice, you know, to everything around you. Because I agree with that too. This song was also strange, in a structured sense, because you have like the fucking like primitive man droning part, and then it's like
yeah. It's like da 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 da.
Yeah, it's like, what is this Queen or is this just Black Sabbath? I don't know.
And then, like, as soon as that starts, like, goes for a minute, and then out of nowhere, it's just primitive man.
Oh God Almighty.
And I kind of think that's what he was getting at when he's like, yeah, these kids just sometimes do shit that's not even cool. Like, it's just like, why are you doing this? But, like, once again, I kind of do like that as well, that they're just doing whatever they think sounds cool, even if it is just kind of weird and dumb in a way.
Yeah, no, again, like it's a good message. It could have been a lot more harmful, it's art is art, no matter if at first glance like you have to kind of understand where they're going from with it. And again, looking at it through the lens of like doom metal, I definitely see a little more of the structure now. And hey, like people, like if you put a Queen song on the radio today, right? If you put fucking Bohemian Rhapsody on the fucking radio today, and it goes from the fucking like soft chill part, and it's like I see a little silhouette of a man. Everyone be like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. And I'm not going to say this of all music because I can't speak definitively. I don't really listen to like pop or anything. But so much of what I do hear, like I'm going to call out the Swifties, I guess. But
Oh no.
yeah, I know. Fucking James Hetfield is on one roof. The Swifties are going to be on another. Everybody's coming for us now, Tiberi. I've made you so many fucking enemies. But no,
God
like
damn it.
it is so kind of like sanded down and removed of any like hard edges, you know, that it's just really boring to me. You know what I mean? So like I appreciate even when stuff doesn't work, I appreciate when somebody is like, well, I'm gonna do this weird thing and just see what happens. And
Oh yeah, and like you said, like, is it my favorite? No, but is it fine? I'm sure. I'm sure there's enjoyment for people out there in this exact song. Like for me, maybe not so much, but yeah, hey, all art is subjective.
yeah, no, like I said, I just think that this captures that wall of sound better than most anything else at the time. You know,
That's true as well.
So yeah, I think it did that well. But no, that's all I was getting at is like, you know, even though I'm not a big Queen guy necessarily, I do really respect what they were doing. Whereas you know, a lot of this like kind of hyper polished stuff that's coming out, I'm just kind of like, it's whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just not interesting to me.
For sure. I guess with that in mind, segue into the next song.
Okay, so the next one is Forever My Queen by Pentagram. Pentagram has a really interesting story. They were formed in 1971 in Northern Virginia. So they were formed in 71, and they're this like really early kind of doom metal band. When do you think their first album was released?
83.
85.
Fuck. Damn it.
So it
was all on black, and that's what happened.
It was. Hey, you were pretty close. So the song that you heard was recorded in 1973 because they did like demos and they released some singles, but it just never happened for them. They like never got signed. You know what I mean? Like they could never get the funds to do like a full album and a full release. The only consistent member from 71 to now was Bobby Liebling. He is the singer. And the list of people who have been in Pentagram is just massive. Like it has been just like this revolving door. And they never made it, and a lot of people are kind of like, why didn't they make it? Because they were this American answer to Black Sabbath. They were like super heavy. The stuff that they were writing was even if it's not your thing, it's like the actual songwriting is really good. You know what I mean? Like they're writing these really good hooks, these like great riffs, you know?
Yeah.
The reason it never happened was partially like the world, but also just because like Bobby Liebling just seems like kind of an asshole.
Okay.
So they somehow, I don't know who brokered it, but they were meeting with Sandy Pearlman and Murray Krugman, who are like the producers, or well, they were the producers and the manager of Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh.
And I don't know, how much do you know about Blue Oyster Cult?
I know Go Go Godzilla, and I know Don't Fear the Reaper. That's all I know.
So, like, they're a really interesting band in that they didn't really form naturally as a band. If I remember this correctly, Sandy Pearlman just, like, wrote a bunch of poetry, and he's like, this would be pretty kick-ass if a rock band did this. So he just kind of formed a band and was like, hey, I'm your manager. Sing songs about my poetry now. And, so that's how that happened. So, like, it's a weird kind of story. But anyway, so Sandy Pearlman, he's that guy. He's the Blue Oyster Cult guy. So they were paying for Pentagram to record a demo that they were then going to, like, pass around to studio or to record labels to try and get a record deal. They're recording a song. And Bobby Liebling is like, hey, I want to redo that. I don't think I really did a great job. I didn't like my delivery or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it was Murray Krugman, or there's one of them, was like, hey, we're paying for this time. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just have a very limited amount of time. We just need to get through it so that we have something to show these, record labels.
Yeah.
And which is pretty reasonable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bobby Liebling took their manager into the recording booth and made sure that the sound was on and everybody could hear. And he's like, why are you working with this guy? He's a fucking piece of shit. He's an asshole. Why do I have to put up with this asshole? And like just goes on and
Oh my
on
God.
like about how this guy fucking sucks and he knows what, he's the artist and all this stuff. So instead of like having a fight with them, they just packed up and left. They're like, fuck it, I'm not going to work with this guy. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't fucking blame him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So shot himself in the foot there. Another time, because they were like in the underground kind of like hard rock metal scene, they were pretty big names. Another time, like the guys from Kiss, like it was, I don't remember which ones, but it like Gene Simmons like came to their house because they were going to audition for Kiss. And so he comes over to their, whoever's house, and they stand around waiting because two of the guys in the band worked that day. They worked as like trash men or something, and they were waiting because these guys had gone to work, which, I mean, you kind of have to do. I get it. They finally get back late, and they're like, okay, we've been waiting for you for how long? Like, play now so we can see it. So they play, and they're like still in their uniforms and shit. And apparently the guys in Kiss are just massive assholes because, and once again, I get it. They were waiting and they probably thought they were the most important things ever. So they waited, they played, and then they're like, okay, what do you think? And Gene Simmons was just like, why is the drummer so fucking fat? And they're like, what do you mean? Like,
What? What?
yeah.
Gene.
And they're just like, and then Kiss left. So that was another time that they were like so close. You know what I mean? And yeah, it just never happened for them. Even when they got their stuff out there in the 80s, it was way too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah, jeez.
So anyway, it just never happened for them. I can tell you a little bit more about their legacy, but if you want to tell me what you thought of the song.
Okay. So, this one, honestly, I was fine with. Again, felt very bluesy. Definitely felt like kind of more so of a straight hard rock song than like Primitive Man or like any of the other stuff before we listened to. This one felt more like just heavy. And just a lot of like, if I'm wrong, this was a lot of shredding, like a lot of layered guitars and stuff on this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's definitely more straightforward with what my brain was expecting on this song. As far as the lyrics goes, it seems pretty kind of straightforward. Like, you and me, baby, we got nothing else but each other. We're gonna make this work, and trust me, this is gonna be a perfect future for us, right?
Yeah, it's very much just like, yeah, like you're saying, it's just, like, oh, I'm this cool guy and you're this cool girl and we're gonna, what is it? There ain't nothing gonna stop us now. We're willing and we both know how. It's like, okay, man.
So yeah, man, just, hey, right. So it's like, go for it. So yeah, lyrically, I mean, it was again, fine. I don't have any, yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I didn't really have a strong feeling on this one. Like I said, just kind of felt like I was there.
Yeah, I think
Go on, sorry.
no, like, so this one I kind of picked just because it was the most, because they had earlier stuff from like 71, 72. They at the time they were going under the name Macabre, and it's, I don't know, maybe more interesting. I almost picked this one just because it is kind of the most prototypical metal, like very doomy, like big riff mixed with shredding,
Yeah.
And I think it does kind of show why people thought like, oh, why are they not going anywhere? These guys are just kind of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, that's not my favorite song of theirs. They do have stuff that I really like, because they have obviously later stuff, from the 80s onward. They're actually considered, now, because at the time nobody, like, if they'd come out in the early 70s, if their stuff had been put out in the early 70s, I think that it kind of would have lit the world on fire a little bit in the same way that Black Sabbath did, because the people that were in the fucking music biz or whatever would talk about them, and they'd be like, yeah, they're this like really kind of gritty American Black Sabbath, like they could really go somewhere. And then by the time their stuff came out in the 80s, everybody was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we're doing thrash metal now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
But then after that, like, once people were like, oh shit, this early stuff is really cool, we're going to make a bunch of stuff like that, and it became doom metal. They're kind of one of the bigger names in doom metal now. And I don't know how successful of a career any of them were able to build off of it. Though, like, people call them, like, quote unquote, one of the big four of doom metal, along with Candlemass, Saint Vitus, and Trouble. And I feel like they probably all have probably been more commercially successful than Pentagram. There's this really good documentary that it's like really sad, but it's this really good documentary about this guy who, he's a filmmaker, and he is just a big doom metal guy. And it was kind of at this time when people were rediscovering Pentagram, and it's like 2009 or whatever. And he just really wants to help Bobby Liebling have a career. And he was like, your stuff is so great. I want you to be out there. I want you to be making music. He just really wanted to help the guy. And when you're kind of introduced to Bobby Liebling at the beginning of this, he's, this old guy who is just like hopelessly addicted to drugs. He lives with his parents, and he like has all this like, like all these scars on his arms because he is on like heroin, and he always picks at his arms because he says there's bugs in there. Like shit like that. Like, it's really sad. And so this documentary is basically just this guy trying to help this guy get on his feet and like be able to make the music that he wants to make. And it's really sad, man. Like he's just like in this cycle of like addiction and like self-doubt and all this stuff. And since then some other stuff has come out that maybe I don't know if maybe he's kind of a bad dude, I don't know.
Okay.
Because like I said in this documentary, his parents are just absolutely there for him, and his mom is just like, oh yeah, his music was so good, he's so talented, I just don't know why he didn't make it, because he's just so much better than anything else out there. And like, they're just so supportive. And then this is like 2017 or some shit, he was arrested for like elder neglect or something, because, and like I don't know the details, but I really hope that he wasn't being bad to his mom, because his mom was just like so there for him and so good to him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, I get that.
But it's just a sad story. Like, no matter what happened or who did what, it's just sad, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know, that's kind of wrapping that up, I guess. Not to go on and on about just like sad Pentagram story, but like I do think that this is kind of what I'm getting at when people are like, oh yeah, Black Sabbath, they're the metal band, they're the ones that invented it. It's like, there was so much other stuff going on that is just, for one reason or the other, has been forgotten. Like, so many of these bands you saw put out like one album, and then for whatever reason they broke up. Yeah,
and I think I think is there anything else on that song or band you want to kind of touch on?
No, I kind of went on and on about Pentagram, but no. No, I mean, I think that they are. I think that there's a reason maybe why you're like, oh yeah, this is what I was picturing when you said metal, because Pentagram was so kind of ahead of the curve and like influential, because even though they didn't have that success, there are a lot of people, especially now, they're just like, holy shit, Pentagram was amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And that's kind of one of the things too, where it's like, I don't know. I think sometimes too, the market can really drive opinions in a lot of ways, where it's like, people, if you ask so many people, when people will say like, oh, I'm into metal, I'm like, oh yeah, what do you listen to? And they go, Metallica. I'm like, okay, well, okay, but anything else?
And like, I'm not a big Metallica guy, if I'm honest. And it's not because they did have a run of like, I think it was like 4 albums there that were really good and like really influential on thrash metal specifically. But even saying that, people are like, oh yeah, Metallica, they're one of the big four. There was, them and Megadeth, and then Anthrax was in New York, and Slayer was kind of doing their own thing that was heavier, and they became big and influential on death metal. But what I'm getting at is like, okay, if we're going to talk about Metallica, we need to talk about Exodus, which was a band that they were seeing at the time, which, is super thrashy, and like, you know what I mean? Like, so we always see, like you're saying, all these bands that are kind of getting lost,
Yeah, and that's unfortunately how the music business goes sometimes, right?
Yeah, and like Exodus is still a pretty big name, but they're not fucking Metallica.
Yeah, like you said, Metallica. I mean, for most people, they know who they are. I mean, if they've been around long enough for them to see them on TV and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, they're in fucking Fortnite.
I fucking can't believe that shit. I fucking can't believe this shit. No, that's fucking wild. We have Fortnite, and we have Billie Eilish and Metallica running around with Peter Griffin and all of the Naruto cast. I fucking cannot believe this. We've come too far.
And like with Super Smash Brothers, it makes sense because they make move sets based on the game that they're in. Fortnite is literally just like, oh, you like this character? Well, I gave him an M16. Have fun.
The world we fucking live in, man.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
So fucking dumb.
You know what we need to you need to know, or you know what we need to do, don't you?
What's that?
We need to go back and be primitive man.
Yeah. Oh boy, I need that sound clip for everything.
So, just like kind of as a wrap up thing, can you give me a few of your favorites?
For sure. I don't know if I'd say if I had to pick one that was the overall favorite, I would definitely say Nevermore by Elf. Just fucking Dio. Everything he touches just turns magic. Second and third, I think would be kind of a split tie between Sir Lord Baltimore, Kingdom Come, and Dust Pull Away. Both of those are pretty rad. So yeah, I'd say those are the three big standouts for me.
Oh, okay. See, I'm not surprised by any of those. I did think Wishbone Ash would be pretty high up there.
They're good. I don't know why. I don't know why they just didn't catch me as much as the other ones did. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe because the other ones were a little less fantasy based and a little more like emotion, like lyrically, in, like depth to it.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But yeah, I say it's a bad song. I still liked it, but
yeah, and like I said, even though I still think it's a really good song, I do think it's the weakest of the album, and that's partly because I was like, okay, this is kind of heavier than the rest of it. And like I said, I'm definitely going to show you that album at some point. So I was like, well, I don't want to spoil the best one,
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, but those are the three I'd say. I like the most of all these.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I hope that you had fun listening to this stuff. I hope that you kind of feel like you maybe learned a little something, because this was designed to kind of be a deep dive into the first 5 years of heavy metal,
Yeah, no. So I want to say I think this is a really great idea you had to go off the popular ones and do stuff that's maybe a little more obscure yet influential. Because something like, for example, with Wishbone Ash, the first thing I said was, this is a Leonard Skinner ass fucking intro, and then the first thing you said was they were intensely inspired by them, which it's cool to see that. Like even without. I was able to draw that line with no outside context.
Yeah,
and that's cool.
Yeah, you said like Thin Lizzy. They're another one that was super influenced by Wishbone Ash.
Okay.
I mean, even like I said, super thrashy stuff like Overkill. They've been like, oh yeah, Wishbone Ash is huge for us.
Yeah.
Because like I said, they kind of did take that idea of, and this is something we already covered, but just the guitar harmony, like that's kind of Wishbone Ash at this point,
Oh, for sure. And yeah, so I think that was probably one of the coolest things about going through this. And just honestly hearing some pretty cool new music. Like I said, always good to hear more Dio. But yeah, I a couple other bands, like I said, Sir Lord Baltimore and Wishbone Ash and oh god, I can't think of the fucking name of them right now. Jesus Lord, Dust. All four of them. Really interesting stuff. I think I probably listen to more if there was some other good stuff out there. But yeah. I definitely learned a lot from this. Like I said before, I came into this with a very predetermined outlook as to what metal was. Even though we had talked about, doom metal, and we had talked about black metal before, excuse me, there's actually there's a lot more nuances, and I'm starting to understand more and more of them. And honestly, too, because like I said before, when you say metal, so many people will just think of a black box, and they say Metallica's in the black box. That's all they know. And it's like, okay, not to say they're not metal, just saying that there's more to it than that. And it's for me, the two polars were Metallica and insane speed metal, super hard heavy shit.
Yeah.
And it's those are the only two I really knew. But hearing stuff like that, like Blue Cheer, calling that heavy metal, I would never in a million years have thought to myself that's a heavy metal influenced song. In the context, now I understand that. So that's cool to hear.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad, because like I said, that was kind of the goal. And, part of the reason that I picked this stuff was because I was like, oh, okay, well, if I'm going to be showing Tiberi all of these metal albums, there's kind of a framework of knowledge that to really get a lot out of them, you kind of have to have, and that's why I was like, well, let's just start at the beginning. You know what I mean? The first 5 years. Let's look at that. And we can talk about how that kind of influenced other stuff. So, yeah, I'm glad that it sounds like I was kind of successful at least, and that you feel like you kind of learned some stuff and maybe how it evolved and grew.
Yeah. You know what else evolves?
Was it Primitive Man?
Primitive Man.
Man, so do those pigs, because apparently they learned how to talk and to walk, and
oh shit,
that's the way they're taught.
Jesus Christ. Oh God. Well, man, again, thank you very much for sharing. Is there anything else you wanted to go over here at all?
No. Like I said, I mean, this was a lot of fun for me to kind of prepare the playlist, and because there was some other stuff I wanted to include, but I was like, this is already 15 songs. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do that. It was a lot of fun to make the little intros for the bands and think about okay, well, why? What can be taken away from this band as the thing that was influential? So no, it was really fun for me. So thank you as well.
Absolutely. No, I think that format was really interesting, actually, talking about it song by song, because that kind of gave some really interesting kind of flavor to every single one, as opposed to trying to figure out all up front and digest it as I went along. It definitely helped to kind of get it, piecewise. So cool. Yeah, again, really, really cool way you did this, I think. But
yeah, thank you.
I may have some ideas like this in the future. I mean, God, I would have to do a little more research as far as you could do punk in the same way, right? You could do a lot of, there's so many genres of fucking punk. I mean, ska punk we did one band on. There's fucking so many bands of ska punk. It's crazy. But yeah, man, again, thank you for sharing. It sounds like you did a lot of research for this, so I appreciate that. I guess, is there anything else you want to talk about here before I throw some media your direction?
No, man, let's hear it.
All right, so let's see. Last week I had you watch Shutter Island, live action movie. I'm gonna have you watch another movie this week. How does that sound?
Sounds fun.
Okay, so we're gonna go back into the anime realm. I'm going to have you watch a film called Maquia. That's Maquia.
Okay.
Subtitled "When the Promised Flower Blooms." And basically, I'll give you a short premise. Follows the story of a young girl. She is basically a member of this long-living race of people, and basically her village is put in a situation, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Is Goku in it?
I don't know if that's insensitive or not, man. I don't know if you can just fucking throw anime characters to something and just say it's part of it.
That's the only anime character I know. I'm just assuming that Goku's in all of them.
Motherfucker, you've seen the medicine seller. You know who the fucking medicine seller is. Don't give me that shit. Don't you fucking besmirch him. He's one step ahead of you, and you fucking know he is. He's always one step ahead of you.
Yeah, I would think I was clever, and then he would be like, I know your shape, I know your form, I know your reason. I'm just like, oh shit, I fucked up.
Fuck. I'm in a sword now. But no, it's a really interesting adventure there on that. I think 2 hours long. I'd like to hear your feedback on it. I'll give you some more details next week when we talk about it, because I think we really need to talk about it in a whole overview. So yeah, cool. Is there anything else we needed to touch on this week?
No, I'm excited for it. It's always fun when it's something that I probably don't have much background on, because like I said with Shutter Island, where I've seen stuff like it or whatever, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of see where this is going. But no, with anime and stuff, I don't really have much reference, so it's fun to be like, oh, okay, let's see how this is, kind of like what you're saying with this.
Yeah, now this is going to be a lot more kind of conventionally animated. First of all, this is a beautifully animated film, but this is going to be a little more along the lines of, like, say, like Princess Mononoke and its visual style. It's not a Ghibli film, but it's more along those lines in that kind of style and narrative. But visually, it is fantastic to look at. Definitely not as, I will say, Mononoke, the TV series. That is one of the most unique forms. You will see few forms like that, and that was a high benchmark. I'll put it that way for a serial anime. One-off movies like this and Princess Mononoke and the Ghibli stuff, those can be great, and there are a lot of those that are great. A lot of the serial stuff that goes episode by episode on like Crunchyroll and or is season based, a lot of that shit sucks. So we're gonna tailor that. I definitely want to show you some bad anime eventually, but now is not the time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that can definitely be said of anything. Like when you look at all the fucking just garbage that we put out, just like all the fucking, you know what I mean? Like all the fucking reality show and all the fucking cop dramas and all this stuff. Much.
No lie, I thought you meant this podcast specifically.
Oh yeah. when you listen that fucking Ron Rash episode, it's gonna haunt me. But no, that's all I'm getting at is like that can be said of any form of media. There's gonna be a lot of it that's just fucking terrible. That's just made because somebody thinks they can attach a commercial to it.
Yeah. So as you watch, I definitely want you to look at the animation. I think it's gonna be one of the big things we talk about next week. But no, I think I hope you enjoy it. It's a fun one for me. So.
Okay. Well, I will look forward to it. If anybody needs to get a hold of us, it is bestfriendsdissimilarinterests@gmail.com. I will be very excited about your email. Is there anything else we need to go over, Tiberi?
Yeah, I think you just need to go ahead and block James Hetfield's and Taylor Swift's email addresses now so we avoid the problems later.
Their lawyers will find us.
Don't say that shit. No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Look, I'm not even that scared of Metallica. They're old men at this point. But,
no.
But the fucking Swifties, why did I fuck with them, man? Like, that's like if you're in the fucking zombie apocalypse and you just pull out some brains and wave it around, like, they're going to fucking get you.
I hear the toilet rattling, and they must be coming through the pipes now. No. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you. We love you guys. Stay safe, be kind to each other, and tune in next week to hear two idiots talk about things they like.
Whatever time of day it is for you, have a good one, y'all. Bye, Tiberi. I love you.
Bye, Matt. Love you too. I'll talk to you on Discord when this disconnects. We'll hit the stop button.
Now they know our secrets.
Fuck off.